Chapter 826. Faced with such a situation, Ning Shu had to act quickly. After a period of observation, Yang Yuhui basically returned to the neighborhood at 11 o'clock at night with the smell of alcohol on his body. Obviously, he was socializing. The current Yang Yuhui did not have the qualifications to be willful. He had not reached the level where he could shake the entertainment industry with a stomp of his feet. Ning Shu hid in a small alley, which was a blind spot for surveillance. Ning Shu was wearing black clothes that reeked of sweat. There was no fragrance on his body and he smelled like a man. His hair was tied into a bun, covered with stockings, and put on a hat. It was basically impossible to see what Ning Shu looked like. He did not know if Yang Yuhui would walk home today or if someone would drive him home. If he drove, all his preparations would be in vain. Ning Shu hid himself and waited for Yang Yuhui to pass by. It would be midnight in an hour. There were fewer people on the roadside, and the street lights were silver. Damn, so many mosquitoes. Ning Shu could not help but slap the mosquitoes on his face. He could even bite through his stockings. Who's there? A male voice sounded. When Ning Shu heard this voice, he quivered. It was not a waste to feed the mosquitoes in the middle of the night. Yang Yuhui's heart was beating like thunder. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. He immediately wanted to run, but he saw a black shadow pouncing on him. It was pitch black and his face could not be seen. Yang Yuhui's heart suddenly thumped heavily. His ears were filled with the sound of his heart beating rapidly. He could not hear the surrounding sounds. Ning Shu mobilized the qi gene in his body and used all his strength to pull Yang Yuhui to a hidden place. Yang Yuhui did not even have the chance to struggle. He was pulled away without even having the time to react. Yang Yuhui's nose suddenly smelled the stinky sweat of a salted fish. His mouth was covered, and he felt that this person's hands were stinky. Ning Shu did not even think before knocking Yang Yuhui unconscious. Yang Yuhui grunted and fainted. Ning Shu held a silver needle between his fingers and felt Yang Yuhui's face. He found a place and inserted the needle. There are many nerve acupoints on the face, so you can't speak smoothly without cutting your tongue. After that, Ning Shu inserted another needle into Yang Yuhui's nose. This made Yang Yuhui's mouth crooked, and saliva flowed out from the corner of his mouth. After the needle was inserted, Ning Shu felt Yang Yuhui's hand and touched Yang Yuhui's wrist. The needle was inserted very deeply into the meridians. Yang Yuhui immediately woke up from the pain. Ning Shu struck him again and knocked him unconscious. Ning Shu cut the silver needle with a pair of scissors, leaving a small part of the needle in Yang Yuhui's wrist. After one hand was done, Ning Shu took out a silver needle and inserted it into the other wrist. Yang Yuhui was awakened by the pain again. His whole body was drenched in sweat and his eyes were dizzy. Ning Shu did not hesitate to knock him unconscious again. He cut the silver needle and inserted it into the wrist. After doing these things, Ning Shu searched Yang Yuhui's wallet. There were only a few small denominations of cash and a bag of bank cards. He found a check. It was too dark to see the amount on it. Ning Shu tore it up. Ning Shu left Yang Yuhui here and went out of the alley. He pressed down his hat and walked away. Ning Shu threw the scissors, silver needle, and other things from the bridge into the river. He took off the stockings on his head and stuffed them into his bag. He could still wear them after washing them. Ning Shu returned to the dormitory. It was already 2 o'clock. Ning Shu was about to go upstairs when a strong light shone on Ning Shu. Ning Shu used his hand to block the strong car lights. Ning Shu saw Li Xinze leaning against the car with his arms crossed. He tilted his head and looked at Ning Shu. Fuck. What was this guy doing here in the middle of the night? Ning Shu walked over and asked Li Xinze, "Why are you here?" Li Xinze looked down at Ning Shu and said indifferently, "It's so late. Where did you come back from?" Ning Shu was speechless. What should she say? Should she say that she went to do something bad? Even if she told the truth, would Li Xinze believe her? I just want to know where you went. It's so late. Li Xinze walked over to Ning Shu and smelled Ning Shu's scent. What did you do? What's that smell on you? Ning Shu cried and threw himself into Li Xinze's arms with a sweaty smell. Li Xinze suddenly felt like he was going to suffocate. Finally, he sighed and hugged Ning Shu. What happened? Ning Shu lifted Li Xinze's clothes and wiped his tears. I'm being chased. Ning Shu blew his nose. Yang Yuhui found someone in the underworld and said that he would cut my tendons, cut my tongue, and rape me before killing me. Why did he have to cut your tendons and cut your tongue before raping you before killing you? Why waste so much effort? Li Xinze's tone was bad. I just want to know where you went tonight and why you only came back now. I've been waiting since 10 o'clock. If he cut my tendons, I won't be able to struggle. If he cut my tongue, I won't be able to scream. This logic makes sense. Ning Shu said. Li Xinze was speechless. Could he be interested in being covered in blood? What I'm concerned about is why you came back so late. Do you know that it's dangerous for a girl to be outside at night? Li Xinze's tone was very bad. I'm telling the truth. Yang Yuhui asked Long Shuangshuang to find someone to cripple me. Recently, some people have appeared in the school. If you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you tomorrow. Ning Shu said sincerely. Please believe me. Li Xinze rubbed his eyebrows. I just want to know where you went tonight and what nonsense you're talking about. Ning Shu. Degree. Fuck, so annoying. So annoying, so boring, so annoying. Could it be that he suspected that she had cheated, went on a date, and went to get lost? Ning Shu said indifferently, if I said that I was being chased and only got rid of them now, would you believe me? You're teasing me. Li Xinze said lightly. See, you really don't believe me. Ning Shu sighed. I went to follow Yang Yuhui and Long Shuangshuang. Boss Long's daughter. Li Xinze raised his eyebrows. The entertainment circle was a mix of good and bad. It was normal for Li Xinze to know Long Shuangshuang. Yes, I don't know how I offended Yang Yuhui. Yang Yuhui wants Long Shuangshuang to deal with me. Ning Shu said. I think Yang Yuhui is taking revenge on me for rejecting him and making him lose face. Li Xinze rubbed his chin and smelled the smell coming from Ning Shu's body. I'll come find you tomorrow morning. I must verify this matter. Ning Shu nodded. I'm going to take a shower. Drive slowly. Call me if you have anything in the future. Don't wait like this. If you have time to wait for someone, you might as well sleep and take care of your body. Ning Shu said lightly. Li Xinze said after a while, your phone is turned off. Ning Shu was speechless. Awkward again. Ning Shu smiled and turned to go upstairs. Seeing Li Xinze drive away, Ning Shu let out a sigh of relief. Dealing with Li Xinze was really difficult. Even a hit was not as tiring. Chapter 827. Ning Shu tiptoed into the dormitory. She didn't turn on the lights. She went straight to the bathroom and washed her body clean. She also washed her dirty clothes. Chen Jianan, are you crazy? You're either playing on the computer or washing clothes at night. Can't you just stop? Fang Menghan shouted angrily. Can't you just let me sleep? Ning Shu ignored Fang Menghan. He hung the clothes on the balcony and started drying his hair with the hairdryer. Chen Jianan, are you doing this on purpose? Fang Menghan pulled open the curtain and shouted at Ning Shu with an unfriendly expression. I can't sleep with my hair wet, can I? Ning Shu blow-dried her hair and sat cross-legged on the bed to begin her cultivation. While cultivating, he actually fell asleep. Yang Yuhui, who looked like he had been robbed, slept in the alley for the whole night. When he woke up in the morning, the sun was already high in the sky. Yang Yuhui suddenly felt uncomfortable all over. First of all, he couldn't close his mouth and saliva flowed out. His neck was sticky. Apparently, the saliva from last night had stained his clothes. Yang Yuhui felt that his face was itchy, as if there were ants crawling on it. It was very itchy, as if they were crawling on his heart. Yang Yuhui couldn't help but scratch his face. When he raised his hand, he felt that his wrist was swollen and painful. Yang Yuhui touched his face with his hand and felt saliva. The corners of his mouth were a little crooked. Yang Yuhui felt that his hand was very sore. He couldn't help but shake it, and it hurt even more. Yang Yuhui checked his wrist. It was red and swollen. Even his 10 fingers were swollen like carrots. His skin was hot, and the veins in his palms and fingers were throbbing. What did that black shadow do to him last night? Yang Yuhui quickly stood up and was about to go to the hospital when he saw some confetti on the ground. Yang Yuhui quickly took out his wallet. The check inside was gone. It was a check of 1 million yuan. He had sold several scripts and songs last night. He only had so much money in total. In the end, it was torn to pieces in less than one night. Yang Yuhui was so angry that his face was distorted. The corners of his mouth were even more crooked. Saliva flowed out of his mouth. Bah! Bah! Bastard! Yang Yuhui stuttered. His mouth seemed to be wrapped with something, and his speech was not smooth at all. Yang Yuhui had a bad feeling in his heart, and fear welled up in his heart. Yang Yuhui hailed a taxi and went to the hospital. After going to the hospital for a checkup, Yang Yuhui cared about his face the most. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he was shocked. He didn't know why his mouth was crooked. Doctor, what am I? Yang Yuhui closed his mouth and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. When he spoke, he felt that his mouth was full of saliva. He couldn't speak at all as saliva flowed down from the corner of his mouth. What? What kind of illness? After Yang Yuhui asked this question, he felt that it was very difficult. Saying this sentence took a lot of effort. It's itchy, my face is itchy. Yang Yuhui's eyes were red. Could it be a disease of the nerve endings? Did it suddenly become like this? The doctor asked. Yang Yuhui wiped away the saliva that had involuntarily flowed out from the corner of his mouth. However, his hand was in great pain and his wrist was bandaged. Both pairs of hands were so swollen that the skin was transparent and shiny. Take these medicine first and do more massages to suit the muscles on your face, the doctor said. Apply anti-inflammatory medicine and medicinal wine on your hands. Yang Yuhui's body was hot and cold. His inflamed hands made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Yang Yuhui went to see a traditional Chinese medicine doctor again. The traditional Chinese medicine doctor said that Yang Yuhui's situation might be because he drank wine and slept outside for a night. Although it was summer now, there was heavy dew at night and the wind entered the body. It could be like this. Actually, it was just a slight stroke. The traditional Chinese medicine doctor prescribed a lot of Chinese medicine and asked Yang Yuhui to go back and recuperate. Yang Yuhui was so angry that he wanted to die. He just wanted his face to be normal. Not only did he unconsciously drool, but his mouth was also crooked. Although it wasn't serious, it seriously affected his image. He wanted to establish a foothold in the entertainment industry in the future. Even if he wasn't extremely handsome, he had to look normal. When he wanted to speak, his tongue was tied. It was as if his mouth was wrapped in water. It was abnormally difficult to speak. When he opened his mouth, saliva flowed out. How was he going to talk business with people like this? Yang Yuhui was burning with anxiety. His face couldn't help but twitch twice. Yang Yuhui spat out the saliva in his mouth. Is there any quick way? Yang Yuhui felt as if there were ants crawling on his face. It was extremely itchy. It wasn't really his skin that was itchy. Even if he scratched it, it wouldn't be able to relieve this itch. This itch was the itch in his heart. It was too uncomfortable. This kind of illness comes quickly, but it's not easy to cure it. The traditional Chinese medicine doctor said. Yang Yuhui felt as if his heart was in a pot of oil. How many opportunities would he miss? Moreover, he was a reborn person. His hands were swollen and he couldn't write a script. His mouth was crooked and he couldn't speak clearly. How was he going to write a script? Yang Yuhui felt an unprecedented despair. This despair made Yang Yuhui panic. It wasn't easy for him to be reborn. Before he could do anything, he got such a strange illness. What was the meaning of his rebirth? Did God want to play with him for a lifetime? In his previous life, he was poor. Even if he had a search system in this life, he was still plagued with disasters. Damn God! Yang Yuhui shivered as he returned to his house. Yang Yuhui's body was trembling violently. He felt hot and cold at the same time. Yang Yuhui lay on the bed and wrapped his body with the quilt. His mouth was crooked and his facial features looked very strange. Yang Yuhui felt as if his hands were about to die. His hands were so hot that it felt like they were about to be cooked. They were so swollen that he couldn't even bend his fingers. Yang Yuhui picked up his phone with difficulty and called Fang Menghan. Yang Yuhui couldn't even speak clearly. Saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He said with difficulty, You come here. Fang Menghan couldn't hear Yang Yuhui's muffled voice clearly. She looked at the caller ID again. It was indeed Senior Brother. Could it be that Senior Brother pressed the wrong button? She shouted, Senior Brother, are you there or not? Yang Yuhui heard Fang Menghan's words. He leaned over the bed and spat out the saliva in his mouth. He shouted, I want you to come here. Unexpectedly, his voice was full of energy. His pronunciation was perfect. Fang Menghan bit her lips. She packed her things and went to Yang Yuhui's house with her bag. Ning Shu leaned on the computer chair. Seeing that Fang Menghan was still going to look for Yang Yuhui, he couldn't help but suspect that he had failed last night. Could it be that it was too dark and she didn't hit the right acupoint? Why did it feel like Yang Yuhui was fine? If he failed this time, Yang Yuhui would definitely be on guard. There wouldn't be another chance to strike. What a pity. Chapter 828. Fang Menghan was called by Yang Yuhui early in the morning. Fang Menghan was very unhappy. She felt that Yang Yuhui didn't treat her as his girlfriend anymore. He didn't care for her like he did for his girlfriend. Moreover, Fang Menghan knew that Yang Yuhui had some ambiguous relationships with other women. Fang Menghan sighed. She didn't want to break up with Yang Yuhui. Yang Yuhui was a successful man, and he would be even more successful in the future. There would definitely be many flirtatious bitches around him. She was Yang Yuhui's first woman. No matter what, she had to establish her position. Fang Menghan arrived at Yang Yuhui's door. She pressed the doorbell for a while, but no one opened the door. Fang Menghan was very impatient. What was the meaning of this? Was he toying with her? Lying on the bed, Yang Yuhui's face was red and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. When he heard the doorbell and got up to open the door, his hands couldn't move at all. Every time he moved, there would be needles pricking his insides. The pain was unbearable. Every time he moved, Yang Yuhui's face turned pale. When he opened the door with all his might, Yang Yuhui almost fainted from the pain. Senior Brother. Fang Menghan was very surprised to see Yang Yuhui sitting on the ground, especially when she saw that the corner of Yang Yuhui's mouth was crooked, and saliva was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Fong Menghan had a look of disgust on her face for a moment before she hurriedly helped Yang Yuhui up. Send him to the hospital, Yang Yuhui said with difficulty. His hand was in so much pain that he couldn't even move it. Fong Menghan helped Yang Yuhui to the sofa and called the ambulance. Senior brother, what's wrong with you? Fong Menghan took out a handkerchief and wiped the saliva from the corner of Yang Yuhui's mouth. Yang Yuhui's heart was stung by Fong Menghan's actions. He was abnormally embarrassed and angry. Did he feel like an idiot? His mind was extremely clear, but he just couldn't control his facial expression, his lips, and his tongue. Drooling like an idiot and stuttering. When the ambulance arrived, Yang Yuhui said to Fong Menghan with difficulty, the drawer. Gulp. Yang Yuhui swallowed a mouthful of saliva, but saliva still flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Fong Menghan felt a little disgusted, but she still took out a handkerchief to wipe Yang Yuhui's mouth. After wiping twice, the handkerchief was sticky and disgusting. Fong Menghan wanted to throw the handkerchief away. There are documents in the drawer, documents. Yang Yuhui said to Fong Menghan. His big tongue made it hard for him to speak clearly. Fong Menghan followed Yang Yuhui's gaze, opened the drawer, and took out a folder. She opened the folder, and the first thing she saw was the name of the script. Fong Menghan's heart skipped a beat. You're going to SK. Should we send this script to SK? Fong Menghan asked. Yang Yuhui nodded, large drops of cold sweat dripping down his forehead. Fong Menghan stuffed the script into her bag. The price, I have already discussed. Yang Yuhui said with difficulty, wishing he could cut off his disobedient tongue. Yang Yuhui's face turned red. His self-esteem was trampled to the ground, especially in front of a woman who worshipped him. Not long after, the ambulance arrived. Yang Yuhui was carried downstairs to the hospital, while Fong Menghan took the script to SK Company. Fong Menghan gave the contents of the folder to SK Company. Fong Menghan explained to SK Company that Yang Yuhui was not feeling well and asked her to deliver the documents. Because Yang Yuhui had already discussed everything beforehand, the negotiation went smoothly. SK Company gave Fong Menghan a check. On the check was 5 million. When Fong Menghan saw this number, she was shocked, and her heart pounded. No wonder Yang Yuhui could buy a house when he was still a second-year student. If he did not want to keep a low profile, he would have bought a car. Moreover, Yang Yuhui already planned to buy a car. 5 million was a sum of money that many people could not earn in their lifetime. A few scripts, a few songs, it was like robbing money. Fong Menghan put the check in her bag and clutched it tightly. After leaving the company, Fong Menghan had a bold idea. She wanted to turn the 5 million into cash. Could she take some money from it? Anyway, Yang Yuhui's face was not clear, and he would not question SK Company. Money moved people's hearts. Fong Menghan's heart pounded. This idea had been bewitching her for a long time. Fong Menghan's palms were sweaty, and she was struggling. In the end, she let out a long breath. There was no need to fall out with Yang Yuhui for a few million. In the future, when she entered the entertainment industry, it would be a small matter for her to become famous. Especially since Yang Yuhui knew how to write scripts and songs. If he wrote a script for her to be the female lead, she would be able to make money. If he wrote a song for her, she would be able to become famous. Fong Menghan thought it through and let out a long breath. A long string of zeros was too much of a test of one's willpower. Fong Menghan took the check and went to the hospital to find Yang Yuhui. Fong Menghan handed the check to Yang Yuhui. When Yang Yuhui saw the check, he was very satisfied. He opened his mouth slightly and wanted to say something, but saliva flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Yang Yuhui's heart fell from the sky to the ground. Even if he had money, it would not be able to make up for his damaged self-esteem. No matter how much money he had to spend, he had to cure this strange disease. In the past, Yang Yuhui felt that he was not handsome. Now that he thought about it, he felt that it was good to be normal and healthy. Fang Menghan endured the disgust in her heart and took a handkerchief to wipe the corner of Yang Yuhui's mouth. The handkerchief had been wiped a few times, and it was filled with a strange smell. Yang Yuhui slept in the alley for the whole night and did not brush his teeth in the morning. His hand was injured, so he definitely could not brush his teeth. Fang Menghan's face was calm, but her heart was not calm at all. In short, Yang Yuhui's image in her heart had already collapsed. Yang Yuhui wanted to have an operation. His hand was so swollen, and it was getting more and more swollen. His skin looked like it was about to burst. The doctor guessed that there was a foreign object inside. When the X-ray was taken, they found that there was an extremely small needle the size of a fingernail rubbed on his wrist. The hospital arranged for the operation to be done as soon as possible and took out the thin needle. When Yang Yuhui woke up and saw the thin needle, he did not think that someone wanted to harm him. He could not speak, and the needle was inserted into his hand. The doctor said that the needle was inserted into the tendon of his hand, and it was inflamed and suppurated. He had to take good care of it. He could not speak, could not write. He wanted to do this to Qin Jinan, but now he was like this. Only Long Shuangshuang knew about this. Then why did Long Shuangshuang do this? Yang Yuhui remembered that the person was very strong, and his body was filled with the smell of sweat. It should be a man. If it was really Long Shuangshuang's people, why didn't they go to deal with Qin Jinan? Why did they harm him like this? Yang Yuhui was puzzled. He could not understand why Long Shuangshuang did this. What went wrong in the middle? Chapter 829. Yang Yuhui stayed in the hospital, and Fang Menghan stayed to take care of Yang Yuhui. She was willing to take care of Yang Yuhui. After all, Fang Menghan wanted to stay by Yang Yuhui's side after seeing that he was willing to pay millions. Yang Yuhui's heart was in a mess. He wanted to call Long Shuangshuang to ask what was going on, but he couldn't say a complete sentence. There were a lot of things that were stuck in his heart that he couldn't say. Yang Yuhui didn't think that Long Shuangshuang would betray him. This matter must have something to do with Qin Jinan. Yang Yuhui was sure that this matter had something to do with Ning Shu. This was his intuition. Even if Qin Jinan couldn't do it, she still had a rich second-generation boyfriend. Especially the Li family's company, which was very powerful now. It must be someone hired by Li Xinze. Yang Yuhui wanted to ask Fang Menghan, who was beside the bed, about Qin Jinan's injury last night. But when he opened his mouth, saliva flowed out. It made Yang Yuhui want to die. Fang Menghan could only wipe the corner of Yang Yuhui's mouth with an indifferent expression. Fang Menghan saw Yang Yuhui acting like a fool. It made Fang Menghan wonder if her efforts were worth it. Moreover, Fang Menghan found that Yang Yuhui's mouth was getting more and more crooked. She took a lot of medicine every day, but the effect was minimal. The medical fees were not cheap, and Yang Yuhui was like throwing money out. She had never seen Yang Yuhui being so generous to her. Fang Menghan sighed. She could only take care of Yang Yuhui. When he went to the toilet, she had to take off his pants for him. She didn't even treat her parents like this. In these few days, Ning Shu stayed in the dormitory obediently. That night, Ning Shu felt that Li Xinze was angry. Every time she communicated with Li Xinze, she would use a video call to prove that she stayed in the dormitory and didn't go anywhere. Ning Shu told him that someone was following her, but Li Xinze didn't believe it. Ning Shu sighed. Li Xinze was only concerned about where she went that night. Why was it so annoying? One more person means a lot of trouble. Ning Shu thought about it and called Li Xinze. She said to Li Xinze, "Let's go to the hospital. Are you sick?" That night, I really went to follow Yang Yuhui and Long Shuangshuang. I didn't go on a date with anyone. I went to the hospital to check if I was still a virgin. Li Xinze was speechless. Li Xinze didn't say anything for a long time. Li Xinze really didn't know how to respond. Li Xinze sighed. Let's have lunch together. Okay, Ning Shu said immediately. I'll let you see if I'm being targeted. Ning Shu washed up and tied up her hair, revealing her smooth forehead, allowing people to see her facial features at a glance. He was wearing flat shoes and pants. His outfit was very simple. Thanks to Chen Jinan's looks, she was pretty even in a simple outfit. At noon, Li Xinze drove to the dormitory. Ning Shu took out 2 bottles of pepper spray and put them in his pocket. Everything was prepared so that he wouldn't feel burdened when running. Ning Shu locked the door and went downstairs. When Li Xinze saw Ning Shu wearing a t-shirt and jeans, he felt that his girlfriend had become more valiant. Her temperament was different. Chen Jinan's temperament was quiet and elegant. Her current temperament, let's go. Li Xinze opened the car door. Ning Shu said, we'll walk and eat at the restaurant next to the school. Okay. Li Xinze held Ning Shu's hand and walked on the school path. You used to say that you liked this path the most. The leaves are flying, it's very artistic and beautiful, Li Xinze said gently. Ning Shu felt a few gazes on her. These people didn't look outstanding. They were either weeding or sweeping the floor. They couldn't attract anyone's attention. Li Xinze and Ning Shu left the school, followed by a few people. Ning Shu leaned against Li Xinze and said, we're being followed. Li Xinze wanted to turn his head to look, but Ning Shu immediately said, don't look back. Li Xinze frowned. There are many people on the street. We can fight our way out. Ning Shu shook her head. Let's go eat. Maybe I'm wrong. Ning Shu pulled Li Xinze into a roadside restaurant. A few people followed behind them and sat at a table not far from Ning Shu and Li Xinze. Li Xinze's expression was very bad. These people were following them. How long have they been following you? Li Xinze asked Ning Shu in a low voice. Ning Shu moved her lips. It's been a while. Ning Shu ordered 2 dishes and picked up the bowl to eat. Li Xinze didn't have much of an appetite and watched Ning Shu stuff food into her mouth. The few people beside them also ordered the dishes noisily, but their eyes were on Ning Shu and Li Xinze from time to time. Ning Shu ate half a bowl of rice and put down the bowl and chopsticks. Li Xinze paid the bill and pulled Ning Shu away. A person deliberately stretched out his foot to block Li Xinze and Ning Shu's path. Li Xinze's expression suddenly turned ugly. She directly stepped on the leg that was blocking the aisle. Li Xinze was not the kind of person who would be bullied. Li Xinze stepped on the leg, and Ning Shu also stepped on it. Ning Shu's strength was much stronger than Li Xinze's. When he stepped on it, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Ouch! The person who was stepped on immediately covered his leg and wailed. What do you mean? Fuck, do you want to fight? Ning Shu pulled Li Xinze's hand and ran out of the restaurant. A few people ran quickly behind them and chased after Ning Shu and Li Xinze. They quickly caught up with Ning Shu and Li Xinze and surrounded them. These people had a vicious and murderous aura. Obviously, their hands were stained with human lives. Why are you running? Keep running. A man said with a fierce look, you broke my brother's leg and you want to run away? If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know how many eyes you have. Do you know who I am? I know Boss Long. Are you sure you want to fight? Li Xinze coldly said, looking very imposing. What Boss Long? You touched my brother. Even if you know the King of Heaven, I won't let you go. The man's expression was cold. Ning Shu leaned close to Li Xinze and stuffed a bottle of pepper spray into Li Xinze's hand. Li Xinze was stunned for a moment and tightly held the pepper spray. This woman looks good. Brother, how will you let us have some fun later? Another man looked up and down at Ning Shu with a wretched look. Don't mention how disgusting it is. Fuck, son of a bitch. Li Xinze took out the pepper spray and sprayed it into the man's eyes. Ning Shu also quickly sprayed it into the eyes of several people. Ah, hiss, several people immediately covered their eyes. Tears fell down. Their eyes were burning as if they were going to go blind. Li Xinze seized the opportunity and violently beat up several people. Ning Shu pulled Li Xinze and ran back to the school. Chapter 830. Ning Shu held Li Xinze's hand as they ran through the campus. Ning Shu only stopped when they reached the dormitory. She panted heavily with her hands on her knees. Li Xinze lay on the ground, his chest heaving up and down violently. After a while, Li Xinze got up from the ground and looked at Ning Shu. You did it on purpose. You knew someone was following you, but you still walked. You didn't believe me, so I'll let you feel it. Ning Shu said directly. If you suspect anything, you can tell me directly. If you tell me clearly, there won't be any misunderstandings, right? Ning Shu said sincerely. I really didn't do anything wrong to you that night. Li Xinze, why do I always feel so powerless? I'm not fussing about that. It's just that it's so late and it's not safe for you to be outside alone. You should tell me everything and not be so reckless. Li Xinze said. Ning Shu immediately said, it's good that there's no misunderstanding. I'll tell you everything in the future. Right, you said you know Boss Long. How are you going to deal with this? Of course I'm going to find Boss Long. Boss Long has a cooperation with the company. There's a TV series that they're co-producing. Li Xinze's face was serious. We can't just let this go. Long Shuangshuang's father is filming a TV series. Ning Shu was curious. Filming a movie is the fastest way to launder money, and it's a lot of money. Now that the higher-ups are strict, many people have started to go ashore to wash their hands. Just fighting and killing will attract the attention of the higher-ups. Li Xinze said. Ning Shu nodded. Then I'll leave this matter to you. I'm scared of being followed every day. Li Xinze was confused. When did you run so fast? I can't even keep up with you. The will to survive, you know. The power that explodes in the face of danger. Ning Shu said seriously. I'm going up. I'm sweating all over. Ning Shu wiped his sweat and said to Li Xinze, you should go back too. Li Xinze nodded and drove away. Ning Shu turned and went upstairs. When he reached the dormitory, 2333's voice sounded in his mind. Ning Shu, think of a way to get close to Yang Yuhui. Why? Yang Yuhui's fate is coming to an end. The system is about to leave him and choose a new host. 2333 said, I want to completely destroy this system now. This was the first time he had heard 2333 speak in such a domineering manner. Is this system harmful to the plane? Ning Shu asked. Of course, this is a type of space that hasn't formed a plane, so there's no way to form laws. It relies on giving all kinds of benefits and conveniences to the host, causing the laws of heaven and earth to tilt more fate to the host, seizing fate and laws of heaven and earth. A parasite-like existence. Ning Shu nodded. Yes, now he had to find Yang Yuhui and completely destroy that system. Only then would this matter be truly resolved. I just need to get close to Yang Yuhui. Ning Shu asked. No, I need to wait for the system to leave the host. Only then can I take the opportunity to attack its data, 2333 said. If I attack directly, it will cause the host to die. Even if Yang Yuhui dies, it doesn't matter, right? Ning Shu said. 2333 said unhappily, I'm just a system. If I cause the death of a person in the mission world, I will be erased, regardless of whether the person deserves to die or not. The reason why we are restricted like this is because we are afraid that the mission takers will use the support system to do things that will harm the plane. Ning Shu comforted 2333, it's okay. I don't rely on you anyway. You don't have to worry about being erased. 2333 get out get out get out. Ning Shu took a shower. The problem now was where should she go to find Yang Yuhui. She didn't know where Fong Menghan went. She hadn't appeared in a long time. She didn't know how Yang Yuhui was now. Why was there no news at all? Could it be that Yang Yuhui was fine? But 2333 said that Yang Yuhui's fate was coming to an end. Where the hell did he go? Ning Shu took the urone powder and applied it on her face. She turned on her computer and browsed the entertainment news. The entertainment industry was very lively now. Anyway, recently, there were many high-quality television dramas and songs. For a time, hundreds of flowers bloomed. It was very prosperous. She just didn't know how long this prosperity would last. These things didn't belong to this world. They were forcibly stuffed into this world. Ning Shu was watching the television series when she heard the sound of the door opening. Ning Shu turned and saw Fong Menghan. Fong Menghan looked a little haggard. She even had dark circles under her eyes. As soon as she came back, she opened the closet to pack her clothes and put them in her bag. Ning Shu raised an eyebrow and asked, "Why are you packing? School is about to start. Where are you going?" "I have something to do," Fong Menghan said tiredly. She was too lazy to bicker with Ning Shu. She took a few changes of clothes and prepared to leave. "When are you coming back? School is about to start. If the dormitory teacher asks, how do you expect me to answer?" Ning Shu asked Fong Menghan. "I'll be back when school starts." Fong Menghan opened the door and left. Ning Shu went to the bathroom to wash off the mask on his face. Then, he quickly chased after Fong Menghan. Fong Menghan took a taxi at the school gate and left. Ning Shu also quickly hailed a taxi and said to the driver, "Catch up with the car in front." Fong Menghan's car stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Ning Shu followed Fong Menghan to the door of the ward. Ning Shu looked at the ward number. The door of the ward was open. Ning Shu saw Yang Yuhui lying on the bed. Yang Yuhui's mouth was crooked, and saliva was flowing out of the corner of his mouth. Fong Menghan wiped the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. Yang Yuhui looked at Fong Menghan and said with difficulty, "This time, the money, why is it less than half?" Last time, Yang Yuhui saw that Fong Menghan was quite reliable. She came back with a 5 million check. Yang Yuhui was full of confidence in himself. He felt that Fong Menghan would be loyal to him. So, he asked Fong Menghan to negotiate with the people in charge of the script in his hand. In advance, Yang Yuhui gave a price. If the price was lower, he would not sell it. However, there were several times when the price was reduced by half, or even less. Fong Menghan's eyes flashed. The company lowered the price very low. "I also paid your medical expenses before." Yang Yuhui did not suspect anything. He was angry that these companies took advantage of the situation. When he recovered, he would have enough money to make his own movie. Fong Menghan saw that Yang Yuhui did not pursue the matter. She was relieved. Then, she asked, "Do you still have the script? I can help you sell it." Yang Yuhui shook his head. The price was too low. "No, I'm not selling it." Fong Menghan looked a little disappointed. "Don't you have the script?" "Yes." Yang Yuhui saw Fong Menghan staring at him. Her eyes were bright, and there was an unknown light in them. Yang Yuhui had a bad feeling in his heart. "No, I don't." Chapter 831. Yang Yuhui wasn't lying. He really didn't have any scripts left. Now, he couldn't speak fluently and couldn't read the system's search results. He couldn't move his hands at all, let alone write or use the computer. Yang Yuhui was about to break down. If he just lay there and wasted time, the script he wrote might become a waste of paper. Another reincarnated person had already sold the script. Yang Yuhui's heart was filled with uneasiness and fear. He was used to relying on the system and success. If he went back to his previous life where he was nothing, he would break down. Ning Shu stood at the door of the ward and listened to Yang Yuhui and Fang Menghan's conversation. He felt that Yang Yuhui was really careless. He left everything to Fang Menghan. Was the relationship between the two of them so deep? Yang Yuhui had many women. He was afraid that he would fall for one of them. Yang Yuhui asked Fang Menghan to sell the script for him. Fang Menghan must have stuffed money into his pocket. Ning Shu asked 2333 in his heart, as the system left Yang Yuhui. No, 2333 said. It's not easy to find a suitable host. It won't leave easily. Yang Yuhui still has some luck. Ning Shu frowned, when will the system leave? How would I know? I can only attack the system the moment it leaves. 2333 said, when Yang Yuhui's luck decreases, the system will naturally abandon him. That sounds scary. Yang Yuhui relied on the system. Without the system, he would return to his original state. Is there a free lunch in this world? He's the only one with the system. Is he really that special? 2333 said calmly. Since she had to wait for the system to leave Yang Yuhui, she would have to go to the hospital every day. Ning Shu turned and left. It seemed that the system wouldn't leave Yang Yuhui for the time being. Ning Shu called a taxi back to the dormitory and turned on the computer. This time, Ning Shu was writing a script for a movie. Yang Yuhui couldn't move his hands or mouth. If he wrote another script, Yang Yuhui's luck would decrease. When Yang Yuhui's luck ran out, the system would leave Yang Yuhui. Anyway, she was the only one in the dormitory. Ning Shu worked all day and night on the script. When he was done, he submitted it to the Li family company. Then, when he had nothing to do, he would go to the hospital to keep watch. However, there was no news from 2333. Yang Yuhui was recuperating in the hospital, but the symptoms of the crooked corners of his mouth had yet to improve. He took a lot of medicine every day, but it was useless. Yang Yuhui was very anxious in his heart. He had been in the hospital for more than a month. Seeing that school was about to start, how could he meet people like this? Moreover, the hospitalization fees in this hospital were not cheap. Yang Yuhui stayed in a single room and everything was of the best quality. After a few days, the doctor asked him to pay the fees. Currently, Yang Yuhui did not have any scripts to sell and had no income. Instead, he spent money like water. Fortunately, Fang Menghan was by his side to take care of him. Yang Yuhui struggled to say to Fang Menghan, wait for me, wait for me. I'll write a song for you. Fang Menghan took a handkerchief and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. She said reluctantly, Go, don't be in a hurry. Let your body recover first. Your situation is not good. I don't think you're really sick, Fang Menghan said. Yang Yuhui looked at Fang Menghan. Maybe you've provoked something unclean or been cursed by someone. Otherwise, why is there no effect after taking so many medicines? Fang Menghan said. Could it be like this? Yang Yuhui said anxiously. Maybe someone hates you and cursed you. Or maybe you've encountered something unclean. Senior brother, I think you should find someone who knows metaphysics to come and take a look, Fang Menghan suggested. Yang Yuhui seemed to see a new hope, but he did not know anyone who was proficient in metaphysics. Senior brother, I know a Taoist priest. He's the Taoist priest in my hometown. This Taoist priest is very skilled in metaphysics. People in my hometown go to him for everything, Fang Menghan said. But Fang Menghan's face showed that she was in a dilemma. What's wrong? Yang Yuhui was agitated. The corner of his mouth was even more crooked, and his saliva flowed down. Fang Menghan frowned. Her eyes flashed with disgust. She took a handkerchief and wiped the corner of Yang Yuhui's mouth. Yang Yuhui stared at Fang Menghan. Fang Menghan said helplessly, "It's just that the Taoist priest usually doesn't come out. The Taoist priest doesn't care about the matters of the mortal world. He only wants to cultivate." Yang Yuhui's eyes were filled with doubt. Cultivate? Become an immortal? Seeing the doubt in Yang Yuhui's eyes, Fang Menghan said calmly, "We can find other Taoists to come and take a look. If there's really something, we can ask the Taoist priest to come and take it." Yang Yuhui thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. More options meant more hope. "Senior brother, I'll go and contact the Taoist priest." Yang Yuhui nodded. Fang Menghan turned around with a smile on her face. She took her bag and left the ward. Ning Shu hid outside the ward. When he heard the conversation between Yang Yuhui and Fang Menghan, he couldn't help but laugh. Fang Menghan wanted to cheat Yang Yuhui of his money. Ning Shu was watching a good show. When he was successful, he was chased by tens of thousands of people. When he was down, his woman wanted to step on him and take advantage of him. It seemed that Fang Menghan didn't love Yang Yuhui that much. Yang Yuhui's protagonist aura had weakened. His attractiveness to women had also decreased. Yang Yuhui was able to gain the favor of all kinds of outstanding women because of his success. If Yang Yuhui was mediocre, these women wouldn't have interacted with him at all. The strong had more resources. Beauty was also a kind of resource. How could the mediocre Yang Yuhui have the qualifications to protect such a resource? The current Yang Yuhui was very unbearable. He was almost like a cripple. If it wasn't for the fact that she had some money, Fang Menghan wouldn't have taken care of Yang Yuhui like this. He was drooling like a fool. He couldn't even go to the toilet by himself. The glow on Yang Yuhui's body was getting weaker and weaker. Fang Menghan found a Taoist priest in a Taoist robe. When he walked into the ward, the Taoist priest's expression changed drastically. It was as if he had seen something terrifying. Ning Shu found it funny. If he wasn't wearing a Taoist robe, then he was a Taoist priest. Looking at the Taoist robe, Ning Shu suddenly thought of old man Tao Cheng. Only someone like that old man was qualified to be called a Taoist priest. The Taoist priest took a horsetail whisk and shook it violently in front of Yang Yuhui. He acted as a smokescreen and said with a deep expression, "There is a very powerful thing following you. This thing is absorbing your essence. Moreover, it will make everything difficult for you. Your life should have been smooth sailing. You should be rich and powerful. Because this thing is following you, it will affect your destiny." The Taoist priest made up a bunch of nonsense. However, Yang Yuhui believed it. He had the system. The system could search for a lot of things. These things were all wealth. There was really something following him. Chapter 832. Yang Yuhui was confused by the words of the Taoist priest that Fang Menghan found. Most of the people in the entertainment industry believed in fate. Some people were so popular that they were purple, and some people died without making a name for themselves. Yang Yuhui had been in the entertainment industry for most of his life. He had seen some celebrities who would even raise ghosts in order to become famous. Yang Yuhui didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but he felt a chill all over his body. It was as if a pair of eyes were looking at him from a place that he couldn't see. Yang Yuhui's heart was in a mess. Everything was going wrong for him. "Taoist priest, what should we do? Can you get rid of the thing that is entangling senior brother?" Fang Menghan anxiously asked the Taoist priest. The Taoist priest shook his head. "My cultivation is too shallow. This thing is too powerful. I can't deal with it. I might even anger it. Everyone will be in danger. I'll take my leave first. The Taoist priest hurriedly ran away as if he was running for his life. Yang Yuhui was anxious. He looked at Fong Menghan. The corner of his mouth was crooked, and saliva flowed out. Fong Menghan wiped the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. She looked a little scared. Senior brother really has that thing following him. What should we do now? Go and find a Taoist priest. Yang Yuhui said with difficulty. Fong Menghan shook her head. That Taoist priest won't come out easily. I'll call my parents and ask them. Yang Yuhui quickly nodded. Ning Shu just watched the situation develop indifferently. If Yang Yuhui was cheated of his money by Fong Menghan, his luck would be even lower. Fong Menghan didn't invite a Taoist priest from her hometown. The fake Taoist priest kept saying that he didn't want to get involved in karma. Especially since the thing following Yang Yuhui was too powerful, he just wanted to make Yang Yuhui feel fear. She invited him several times, but he didn't come. The same thing was repeatedly mentioned, which deepened the impression in her heart. Especially when others were scared. After a long time, she started to believe that it was true. Moreover, she would magnify it infinitely in her heart. Yang Yuhui thought about how everything was going wrong for him. He felt more and more that there was something around him. Yang Yuhui couldn't eat or sleep well. He had become thin. No matter how Fong Menghan asked the Taoist priest to come out of the mountain, the Taoist priest refused to come. Yang Yuhui said directly, "What? What conditions? I'll agree to them." Fong Menghan said to Yang Yuhui, "Why don't I go home and ask you to come here personally? It's not sincere enough over the phone." Yang Yuhui was eager to change the current situation, so he naturally agreed with Fong Menghan's words. Fong Menghan packed her luggage and left on the same day after buying a train ticket. She didn't come back until a few days later. When she came back, she was accompanied by an old Taoist with a head full of silver hair and a beard that reached his heart. He gave off a sage-like vibe. Since it was forbidden in the hospital, Yang Yuhui could only leave the hospital and return to his room. The old Taoist checked Yang Yuhui's house and blabbered a bunch of things. The feng shui of the house was not good. The white tiger gathered evil spirits and the house was filled with yang qi. If the light was too bright, it would make it difficult for the people living there to control their temper. Anyway, he said a lot of technical terms, which made Yang Yuhui stunned. Fong Menghan quickly asked, "Then, what should we do now? It's better not to live in this house. Choose another room to live in," the old Taoist said while stroking his white beard. Yang Yuhui couldn't help but frown. He had spent a lot of money to buy this house. How could he not live in it? Money is just a worldly possession. If you still want to live in such a house because of money, you won't live long, the old Taoist said lightly when he saw Yang Yuhui's hesitation. Fong Menghan went to Yang Yuhui's side and persuaded, "Senior brother, you should listen to the old Taoist. You can sell this house." Yang Yuhui could only nod. The old Taoist began to perform the ritual. The scene was quite spectacular. Looking at the old Taoist's pale face, one could tell how difficult it was to fight the evil spirit. In the end, the old Taoist spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. The old Taoist woke up and wanted to leave. He said that the evil spirit was too powerful and he couldn't deal with it. Yang Yuhui was even more anxious. He directly offered the old Taoist 200,000 yuan. As long as the old Taoist could deal with the evil spirit, he would pay 200,000 yuan. The old Taoist waved his hand without thinking. He packed up his things and left without looking back. Fong Menghan hurriedly chased after him and dragged him back. This time, Yang Yuhui gave him 1,000,000 yuan. The old Taoist sighed and said, "This thing is too powerful. Forgive me for not being able to do anything." The old Taoist turned and left again. Fong Menghan looked at Yang Yuhui helplessly. Yang Yuhui's mouth was crooked. He shouted to Fong Menghan, "Chase him." Fong Menghan chased after the old Taoist again. The old Taoist was a little impatient. "What? I said that I can't deal with this thing, so I can't." Yang Yuhui made up his mind. 5 million. Yang Yuhui's heart was bleeding. He wanted to save the money to make a movie. But with his current situation, writing a script and making a movie was a joke. "It's not a matter of money," the old Taoist said with a pale face. Fong Menghan cried and begged the old Taoist. "Please help my senior brother. He's a peerless genius. He shouldn't be like this. Please." Fong Menghan's words evoked Yang Yuhui's depression and panic. Yes, he was a person who wanted to start a big business. How could he be in such dire straits? How could he face the search system in his brain? Yang Yuhui added another $1,000,000. The total was 6 million yuan. The old Taoist sighed and stayed in the house to recuperate. He said that he would talk about it after he recovered. The old Taoist made a talisman for Yang Yuhui to drink. After a long and difficult exorcism, the old Taoist finally drove the ghost away. The old Taoist took the 6 million yuan from Yang Yuhui and left. Before he left, he even asked Yang Yuhui to sell the house. This house was really inauspicious. Yang Yuhui had been in the business for half of his life. He had plenty of real estate. He didn't listen to the old Taoist and sold the house. Instead, he rented a new house. With 6 million yuan gone, Yang Yuhui's money was gone. Yang Yuhui's heart ached. But when he thought about how his body was going to recover soon, he would be able to earn back the money in the future. But when it was time for school to start, Yang Yuhui's crooked mouth still didn't change. Whenever he opened his mouth, saliva would drip down. Although the thin needle in his wrist had been removed, his hand was still weak. It wasn't convenient for him to do anything. Moreover, Fong Menghan didn't come to take care of him. He finally managed to call Fong Menghan. Fong Menghan apologized over the phone. She said that school had started and she had to go to class. She couldn't take care of Yang Yuhui. She asked Yang Yuhui to find a caretaker to take care of her. Chapter 833. Yang Yuhui listened to Fong Menghan's excuses and instantly realized that he had been deceived. Fong Menghan was the one who suggested that there was something dirty around him. Fong Menghan was also the one who found the Taoist priest. 6 million. 6 million. Fong Menghan was a bitch. She had conspired with others to cheat him of his money. He had trusted her so much. It was not just 6 million. Fong Menghan must have embezzled the money when she sold the script. Yang Yuhui called her again, but he could not get through. Fong Menghan had blocked him. Yang Yuhui was so angry that his whole body trembled. The corner of his mouth was crooked, and he was drooling. In the end, he was so angry that his eyes rolled back and he fainted. When he woke up again, Yang Yuhui felt that half of his body was numb. He really had a stroke. Yang Yuhui could not figure out why he had become like this. He had become disabled and was betrayed by the woman he trusted. Women were not good people. When he was successful, she would come to him and do whatever he wanted. She was so cheap. Now that he was a little down, this woman turned her back on him. Catching ghosts was useless. Now that he could not move half of his body, Yang Yuhui could only go back to the hospital and continue his treatment. However, Fong Menghan had cheated so much money from him that Yang Yuhui did not have much money left. Every day, he spent money like water. Soon, there was not much money left in his bank account. Yang Yuhui could only sell his house. Now that Fong Menghan was not around to take care of him, Yang Yuhui was very inconvenient. The nurses could not take care of everything. Now, he had a chance to go abroad for treatment. As long as he was cured, he could make a comeback. Yang Yuhui sold a high-end apartment at a low price. Yang Yuhui took the money and went abroad for treatment. Yang Yuhui was also worried that his body would not recover and he would become a paralyzed person at a young age. If he could not be cured, the money would be enough for him to live for the rest of his life. However, he was not satisfied. He had a mountain of gold, but he could not use it. He was not satisfied that he would be paralyzed for the rest of his life. He had already enjoyed the admiration of others and the taste of success. If he suddenly lost it, Yang Yuhui was not satisfied. He was not satisfied. As long as he was cured, he could definitely make a comeback. Therefore, Yang Yuhui took the money from the house and went abroad for treatment. Ning Shu, who was at school, realized that Yang Yuhui had disappeared again. She wanted to get closer to Yang Yuhui so that 2333 could destroy the system. On the other hand, Fang Menghan, who lived in the same dormitory, had a few more branded bags and a lot of branded clothes. She was all smiles every day and didn't care about Yang Yuhui at all. Ning Shu just smiled. In the plot, the female lead who was loyal to Yang Yuhui was now plotting against her own boyfriend. She was trying to take advantage of her boyfriend. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Your clothes and bags are the latest and quite expensive. Did Yang Yuhui buy them for you?" "No, I bought it myself. Am I the kind of person who would ask my boyfriend for money?" Fang Menghan said with a straight face. Ning Shu was speechless. He didn't want her, he was lying to her. This was a game of badger. Ning Shu pursed her lips. "Girl, I have a video of you playing badger in my hands." It included the video of him splitting the money with the Taoist priest. Fang Menghan didn't mess with her. If she messed with her and this video was leaked, Fang Menghan might be banned from the entertainment industry before she even debuted. This was a weapon with great lethality. Ning Shu didn't think of making this video public. Fang Menghan didn't want to talk about branded clothes. Instead, Ning Shu asked, "Your boyfriend doesn't come to school now. He's only in his 3rd year." Ning Shu asked, "Why doesn't Yang Yuhui come to school? He's only in his 2nd year. It's boring talking to you." Fang Menghan took her bag and went to class. Ning Shu was speechless. Where should he go to find Yang Yuhui now? Ning Shu took his books and went to class. Anyway, he didn't need to write a script now. He just wanted to enjoy his university life. Of course, it would be better if he didn't have Li Xinze as a boyfriend. Every day, he would call and text Li Xinze as if it was his daily routine. Ning Shu just wanted to find Yang Yuhui as soon as possible and leave this world. If this continued, Ning Shu felt that he would have to break up with her. Feelings were very sensitive. Whether the other party loved him or not, he could feel it. Being in love was a feeling. The feeling of their souls intertwining. Sigh. He just hoped that Li Xinze wouldn't break up with him before he left. Ning Shu asked 2333, "Can you locate Yang Yuhui's location?" "No." 2333 said directly. "Then what's the use of you?" Ning Shu said indifferently, "I've thought about it, but I can't figure out what you can do. I already said that I'm a support system." 2333 said. "You're the mission enforcer. You're the leader. Why do you have to rely on me for everything? Are you the mission enforcer or am I the mission enforcer?" 2333 said angrily. "Oh, hee, what a useless system. Then where should I go to find Yang Yuhui? I can't just run around the world." Ning Shu said angrily, "Everything is for the mission. There's no need to waste time on this kind of thing. Why don't you start locating the location system? 500,000 points and 5 merit points. Fuck, you're robbing me. 500,000 points and 5 merit points. Why don't you just go die?" Ning Shu was willing to pay 500,000 points, but the 5 merit points made Ning Shu's heart ache. Sometimes, she didn't have any merit points in a world. How could a location system be so expensive? Do you want to exchange? In the future, you can locate whoever you want. It's very convenient. Only 500,000 points and 5 merit points. 2333 said enticingly. Ning Shu smiled. Even if she was being cheated until she wanted to cry, she still had to smile and curse. Exchange. Loading the location system, please wait. Ning Shu held his chin and looked at the professor on the podium. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Ning Shu took out his phone. It was a message from Li Xinze. The content of the message was that he would come to pick her up for lunch. He had something to tell her. When Ning Shu saw that Li Xinze had something to say to him, he suddenly had a bad feeling. So serious, could it be that he wanted to break up with her? Damn it. At noon, Li Xinze drove to the school gate to pick up Ning Shu. He called Ning Shu and asked her to come quickly. Ning Shu changed into a dress, put on high heels, and put on some lipstick to make her complexion look better. She dawdled to the school gate. Ning Shu smiled and looked at Li Xinze. Li Xinze looked at Ning Shu from head to toe, opened the car door and said, "Get in." Li Xinze took Ning Shu to a high-class Western restaurant. There were candles on the table, a lace tablecloth, and bright red roses in a vase. Li Xinze pulled out a chair for Ning Shu. Ning Shu kept smiling. So gentlemanly, it shouldn't be about breaking up, right? Chapter 834. Li Xinze took out a rose and handed it over to Ning Shu. Ning Shu quickly took it, smelled it and said, "It smells so good. It smells so good." Li Xinze ordered 2 steaks, and the two of them ate quietly facing each other. Ning Shu looked at Li Xinze from time to time, and seeing that Li Xinze was about to speak, Ning Shu took the lead and said, "How did you deal with Long Shuangshuang's matter?" "I can still deal with it like this." Li Xinze put down his knife and fork, and wiped his mouth. "As long as I tell Long Shuangshuang's father, it won't be Long Shuangshuang's turn to mess around." Ning Shu nodded. There was indeed no one following her recently, and now that school had started, it was not easy for some strange people to sneak into the school. Li Xinze looked at Ning Shu, and muttered to himself for a moment. He wanted to speak, but was interrupted by Ning Shu. What if Long Shuangshuang finds someone else? That won't happen. For the cooperation of the 2 companies, Boss Long won't let her mess around. Furthermore, if Long Shuangshuang wants to inherit the Long family, she won't mess around like this. She still has more than 10 brothers who want to inherit the Long family. More than 10 brothers? Ning Shu was a little surprised. Li Xinze said indifferently, "This is only the elder brother, there are still many younger brothers below, and Boss Long has many mistresses. Every child has the right to inherit, it depends on who has the ability to do so." Li Xinze said with a calm expression. Boss Long was really good at giving birth, he had a lot of illegitimate children. In the plot, it seemed like Long Shuangshuang took over the Long family in the end. With Yang Yuhui's help, Yang Yuhui's luck soared to the sky, and as Yang Yuhui's woman, Long Shuangshuang naturally had luck on her body. Right now, Yang Yuhui was too busy to take care of himself, so he naturally wouldn't pay attention to Long Shuangshuang who was trapped in the Long family struggle. Since he won't come looking for me, then I'm relieved. Ning Shu heaved a sigh of relief. Jianan, I think, Ning Shu, Yang Yuhui is nearby. 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu quickly stood up and said to Li Xinze, "I have something to do. I'll leave first." "Jianan, wait." "Hey." Li Xinze whispered to Ning Shu. "I'll be back soon." Ning Shu turned and ran out of the restaurant. He asked 2333, which direction did he go? "Turn left in front," 2333 said. "Hurry up." Ning Shu quickly ran in the direction 2333 told her. She took off her high heels and ran in that direction. Ning Shu quickly caught up with Yang Yuhui. Yang Yuhui sat in a wheelchair and entered a residential area. Because it was inconvenient for him to move around, Yang Yuhui's rented apartment was on the first floor. Yang Yuhui pushed the wheelchair into the apartment with difficulty. Just opening a door took a lot of effort from Yang Yuhui. Although his hands were no longer swollen, they were still weak and powerless. Half of his body was still numb. Right now, Yang Yuhui didn't dare to appear in front of anyone. Even Yang Yuhui himself was disgusted with his current appearance. He didn't even dare to look at other people's eyes. Disdainful and strange looks. Not everyone could bear the loss of falling from a high position. Yang Yuhui even wanted to kill himself. Whenever he spoke, saliva would drip from the corner of his mouth. His hands were weak and half of his body was numb from the stroke. He used the money to buy the apartment to go abroad for treatment. However, he didn't get any treatment at all. His symptoms didn't improve at all. Instead, he spent most of the money from the apartment. Yang Yuhui looked at his money flowing out. Every day, he took some pills with English words written on them. When he went to the toilet, his urine smelled of medicine. Even his sweat smelled of medicine. When the hospital asked Yang Yuhui to pay again, Yang Yuhui decisively left the hospital and returned to China. However, he didn't have much money left on him. Ning Shu looked at Yang Yuhui's back. Yang Yuhui used to have a feeling of lethargy. After all, he had lived for most of his life. In the past, when Yang Yuhui was successful, he felt mature and steady. However, now that he was at the bottom of his life, he felt like he had one foot in the grave. From his back, Ning Shu felt that Yang Yuhui was already 60 years old. After knowing where Yang Yuhui lived, Ning Shu was relieved. She didn't have to look for him all over the world. However, why was Yang Yuhui in a wheelchair? His hands might have some problems, but his legs were fine. Why was he in a wheelchair now? Thinking that Li Xinze was still waiting for her at the restaurant, Ning Shu quickly ran back to the restaurant door. She patted the dust off the soles of her feet and put on her high heels before pushing the door open. However, Li Xinze's seat was empty. She looked around the restaurant but didn't see Li Xinze. Li Xinze was gone. Ning Shu sighed and took out her phone to call Li Xinze. However, she couldn't get through. Li Xinze's phone was turned off. Ning Shu was speechless. Sigh. He was angry again. If he was angry, then so be it. When the system left Yang Yuhui, her mission would be completed and she would leave this world. She would have nothing to do with Li Xinze. Ning Shu went back to school. She changed into a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. When she didn't have class, she went to Yang Yuhui's place to wait for the system to leave. Yang Yuhui basically didn't go out. The curtains in his room were closed during the day. There was no movement in the room at all. It was as if no one lived there. After waiting for a few days, Ning Shu was getting impatient. She couldn't help but ask 2333, when can I leave? For the past few days, Li Xinze had been texting her saying that he had something to tell her. She always said that she was busy and that she would talk about it in a few days. Ever since she left the restaurant, she and Li Xinze hadn't seen each other again. Ning Shu wanted to leave as soon as possible. This kind of relationship thing was really troublesome to deal with. How would I know when I'll leave? Just wait. 2333 said in a bad mood. Damn, she could wait. However, could Chen Jinan and Li Xinze's relationship wait? Why should she wait? Now Li Xinze wanted to break up with her. Ning Shu waited outside anxiously. In the room, Yang Yuhui was lying on the bed. The light in the room was very dim. Yang Yuhui's face was a little green. The corner of his mouth was crooked and saliva kept dripping down. Yang Yuhui took the handkerchief from the bedside and wiped his mouth. However, he was weak. This action seemed to have used up all his strength. Yang Yuhui's eyes were bright. He was searching for things in his mind. TV scripts, movie scripts, and all kinds of games. These were all treasures. These things could help him succeed. However, he couldn't take them out. Yang Yuhui didn't know where he went wrong. His rebirth life had become so unrecognizable and tragic. In his previous life, he was mediocre. He didn't do anything. He was like a dog that was ordered around by others. However, he was a perfect person. But after his rebirth, he had the system. He couldn't walk. His face was distorted and he couldn't even speak a complete sentence. He was supposed to be a successful person. A person who walked to the peak of life. Chapter 835. Yang Yuhui searched for things in the system over and over again. He watched all kinds of movies and TV series of that world in his mind and tried to figure them out over and over again. When his body recovered, he would be able to make amazing movies and TV series. He could still be successful. Yang Yuhui searched for successful business cases in that world. In the future, he would definitely start his own company. With such good resources, he would not sell them to others. How did it disappear? Yang Yuhui was shocked. His face was trembling, the corners of his mouth were crooked, and his saliva was dripping onto his clothes. But Yang Yuhui did not care at all. He closed his eyes, and his temples were throbbing. When he opened his eyes, his eyeballs were bloodshot. No, it can't be. Yang Yuhui's expression was extremely shocked. The system in his mind was gone. In the past, when he searched for something, the content would appear clearly in his mind. But now, his mind was blank. There was no content. No, Yang Yuhui hugged his head as he collapsed. His system was gone. Without his system, how was he going to turn the situation around? Because of the system, Yang Yuhui was able to survive. It was all his hope. But now that the system was gone, his hope was shattered. There was no chance for him to make a comeback. How could this be? This was impossible. How could the system disappear? How could the system abandon him? Yes, abandoned. Yang Yuhui felt like he was abandoned. Abandoned by the whole world. Yang Yuhui fell off the bed and could not get up. His body spasmed, and white foam came out of his mouth. Yang Yuhui's pupils dilated. He had not made a name for himself, and the system disappeared. Why? Yang Yuhui's body spasmed more and more. His face twisted even more because of it. Ning Shu, who was guarding outside, heard 2333's excited voice. It's gone. Ning Shu was suddenly energized. What should I do? It's none of your business. 2333 did not say anything else after that. There was a faint sound that sounded like a ripple in the air, as if something had exploded. Ning Shu felt his eardrums were very uncomfortable, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. After a while, 2333 said, "It's done. This system is a kind of data. Is it useful to you?" Ning Shu asked. 2333 was silent for a while before he said, "You can optimize my data. I am now a beginner system. There are still intermediate and advanced systems above that, and then there is the super AI. Your system has levels?" Ning Shu asked in surprise. He had never heard 2333 mention this before. "If you can level up, so can we," 2333 said. "Then how can you level up?" Ning Shu asked. 2333 said, "You need to continuously optimize the complete data. You need luck." Ning Shu did not know how the system should evolve. It was not that the system would evolve with her. Ning Shu felt another layer of pressure on her. Now that he had leveled up, 2333 should have leveled up as well. He had become a high-level mission giver, a super mission giver, but 2333 was still a basic support system. It was too embarrassing. Then, did you get the luck that the system collected? Ning Shu asked. The system robbed the host of the luck and the rules of heaven and earth. Since 2333 destroyed the system's things should be his. Yes, the luck and the rules of heaven and earth are all mine. 2333 said happily. Why isn't it mine? Ning Shu was unconvinced. It's all data. Can you use it? 2333 said, this is between us systems. It has nothing to do with you. Ning Shu, now that the problem with the system had been solved, Ning Shu turned around and went back to school. After washing up, she lay on the bed and slept comfortably. The problem was finally solved. Yang Yuhui's condition could not be improved. His parents came to take care of the withdrawal procedures and brought the paralyzed Yang Yuhui home. The school was saying that Yang Yuhui had offended someone in the underworld and had his leg chopped off. There were all kinds of rumors. Yang Yuhui had written the lyrics and script. He was a famous person in school. He rose quickly, but fell like a meteor. After that, Yang Yuhui never showed up at school again. Fang Menghan sighed heavily. Now that Yang Yuhui had left, he did not ask her why she lied to him. It meant that Yang Yuhui had not recovered from his illness and could not speak well. She got a few million for free. Amitba. Fang Menghan completely forgot about Yang Yuhui. Now, there were already management companies that wanted her to be a star. Plus, Yang Yuhui had written a few songs for her. She already had some fans. It would be easy for her to debut. Anyway, Fang Menghan was very proud of her success. Ning Shu just looked at her and didn't say anything. Fang Menghan, Long Shuang, and Yang Yuhui's other women. Without Yang Yuhui, their fates would be different. They would not encounter any problems. Yang Yuhui was like a superhuman who saved them from danger. Those who should be married would be married. Those who should be framed by their siblings would be framed. Those who should be in the entertainment group would be struggling. Although Fang Menghan was proud now, Fang Menghan would never be able to climb to the status she had in her previous life. Without Yang Yuhui as a protective umbrella, Fang Menghan would have to pay a heavy price in the chaotic entertainment circle. Moreover, she had the evidence of Fang Menghan's fraud in her hands. In the storyline, she was loyal to Yang Yuhui and tolerated Li Xinze having so many women because of Yang Yuhui's godlike status in the entertainment circle. No one was more powerful than Yang Yuhui. Fang Menghan was good at currying favor. With Li Xinze's status in the entertainment circle, he would definitely stick to her. With this in hand, when Chen Jinan came back, she would have enough confidence to face Fang Menghan. Mission completed. Do you want to leave the mission world? 2333's voice sounded. Go quickly. Ning Shu hurriedly said. She really could not hold on anymore. As for Chen Jianan's boyfriend, let her worry about it. In the storyline, they could support each other under such difficult conditions. This kind of love would not disappear so easily. Ning Shu felt dizzy. When she opened her eyes again, she was already in the system space. Seeing the familiar furnishings, Ning Shu let out a long breath and wiped the non-existent sweat on her head. It was finally over. Facing Chen Jianan's boyfriend made Ning Shu feel more uncomfortable than facing a scumbag. She would rather face a scumbag than face this kind of person who loved her so much. Every move she made was full of flaws. Ning Shu sat cross-legged on the sofa and silently chanted the clear heart mantra in her heart. Then, she began to cultivate the peerless martial arts and absorb the spiritual energy in the system space to replenish her soul. Chapter 836. After finishing his training, Ning Shu felt refreshed and said to 2333, "Let's take a look at this mission." "Okay." 2333's voice was very light, indicating that he had gained something from this mission. He seemed to be in a good mood. Ning Shu's status panel appeared in front of him. Number, 2333. Name, Ning Shu, Intermediate Mission Taker. Age, 27 points, 8153, 500 000 Soul, 300 HP, 71 Wisdom, 254 Charm, 10 Luck, 84 MP, 160 Faith, 1814600 Martial Strength, 172 Qualifications, 79 Merit, 10050-5 Skills. 5th Ring Shooting Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Martial Arts, Beginner Poison Technique, Beginner Business Management Knowledge, Beginner Code Programming, Beginner Lawyer Skill, Ghost Catching Skill. Honorary Titles, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Tools, Calm Aura, Faith Aura, Amulet 5, Upgraded Amulet Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura, Grass Blessing, Best Friend, Miao Miao Miao's Blessing, Life-Saving Hand, Zhu Sunyang's Blessing, Fulfill Qin Jinan's Wish, Let Yang Yuhui have nothing and struggle in the mud forever. Mission Completion, 100. Obtained 3. 5 million points, 65 attribute points, 600 faith, 500,000 GPS points, 5 merit points. Ning Shu held his face. What a surprise! 5 million points and 65 attribute points. He thought that because of Li Xinzi, the points and attribute points wouldn't be much. He didn't expect it to be more than the previous missions. Ning Shu grinned. Women were indeed petty. He suddenly felt that even if he broke up with Li Xinzi, Chen Jinan wouldn't blame her. Chen Jinan was afraid that he would be intimate with her boyfriend. Oh, he. Ning Shu added the 65 attribute points to Soul, HP, Wisdom, Luck, and Martial Strength. Number, 2333. Name, Ning Shu, Intermediate Mission Taker. Age, 27 points, 11. 15 million Soul, 30010 HP, 7110 Wisdom, 25410 Charm, 10 Luck, 8 for 15 MP, 16010 Faith, 2 for 14 Combat Power, 17210 Aptitude, 79 Merit, 10045 Skills, 5th Ring Shooting Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Level Peerless Martial Arts, Beginner Level Poison Technique, Beginner Level Business Management Knowledge, Beginner Level Code Programming, Beginner Level Lawyer Skills, Master Ghost Catching Skills. Honorary Titles, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Items, Calm Halo, Faith Halo, Amulet 5, Upgraded Amulet Halo, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Halo, Grass Blessing, Best Friend for a Lifetime, Miao Miao Miao's Blessing, Lifesaver, Zhu Sunyang's Blessing. After adding the attribute points, Ning Shu took out the Ultimate Martial Art. There were many chi diagrams in the Ultimate Martial Art. Many species appeared, and this time, there was even a picture of a human. There were stars, suns, moons, grass, trees, rivers, and all kinds of species in the book. A thought suddenly flashed through Ning Shu's mind. Would this book form a world? Ning Shu hurriedly asked 2333, "Do you think my ultimate martial art could form a world?" 2333 pondered for a moment, then said, "It might be possible, but I don't know when it will happen. The formation of a world requires many opportunities. If a book forms a world, how would this world operate? How would the laws of heaven and earth be established?" Ning Shu hugged the book. As long as there was a chance, it would be fine. Maybe in the future, he could find some treasure in the mission world that would help the book evolve into a world. If the ultimate martial art formed a world, this world would belong to her. When she was tired, she could go to the world for a vacation. It was simply too comfortable. Don't be so happy. Whether or not it can form a world is still not certain. 2333 said unhappily. Ning Shu didn't care, I already have a good start. Take it slow and I will succeed. Ning Shu touched the book cover and placed it on the bookshelf. He couldn't help but lightly pat the book, I will rely on you in the future. With a world that belonged to him, he had one more way out. He felt more secure in his heart when he had something that belonged to him. When his excited mood calmed down a little, Ning Shu sat comfortably on the sofa and said to 2333, let's see how Qin Jinan is doing when she returns. A screen appeared in front of Ning Shu. When Qin Jinan woke up, she was lying on the bed. Now that it was dawn, the phone on the bedside vibrated. It was a text message from Li Xinze. Li Xinze was waiting for Qin Jinan downstairs. Qin Jinan covered her mouth as tears came down. She changed her clothes and hurried downstairs. Qin Jinan rushed into Li Xinze's arms, and Li Xinze took 2 steps back. I miss you so much. Qin Jinan's voice choked, and her arms tightened. She hugged Li Xinze tightly. Li Xinze's expression was confused for a moment. Only then did he feel that the person hugging him was familiar, the person who loved him. Li Xinze then laughed out loud, hugged Qin Jinan, and stroked Qin Jinan's hair. What's wrong? Why are you crying all of a sudden? Li Xinze's voice was trembling as he looked at Qin Jinan. He scraped it inch by inch, very carefully. Qin Jinan wiped her tears, I just miss you, I miss you so much. That's great. Li Xinze held Qin Jinan's hand and swallowed the words of breaking up. This was the person he loved. Qin Jinan looked at Li Xinze deeply, you're great, really great. Their eyes met, and there was an indescribable affection. Li Xinze lowered his head and kissed Qin Jinan. Looking at the kissing couple on the screen, Ning Shu silently swallowed a mouthful of dog food. This was the right way to start a relationship. The couple, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, exploded with unprecedented sweetness. Ning Shu curled his lips as he watched. Qin Jinan used the summer vacation to take on roles. Because she had a boyfriend like Li Xinze, although Qin Jinan didn't become the female lead, she still had a lot of scenes. Qin Jinan slowly improved her acting skills, and the opportunities to appear in front of the audience increased. When Qin Jinan graduated, Li Xinze prepared a grand proposal for her. Such a grand scene, a prince, and a dreamy proposal, it was the lifelong wish of all women. Qin Jinan cried tears of joy, and Li Xinze put the ring on her index finger. The two of them hugged and kissed, beautiful and romantic. Ning Shu rolled his eyes, and silently swallowed some dog food. I wish you two happiness. The princess and prince will live happily together from now on. Chapter 837. A year after Qin Jinan graduated, she married Li Xinze. The wedding ceremony was very grand. All the political and business celebrities were present. It was a grand occasion. Just looking at it was enough to make people drunk, not to mention Qin Jinan, the female lead. Just this wedding alone was enough to make people talk about it. Yang Yuhui looked at the newlyweds on the television. They looked like they had walked out of a painting. Yang Yuhui drooled and made a chuckling sound. Yang Yuhui's eyes were fixed on the television. The two of them were together again. The wedding was even grander than in his previous life. And he was even worse than in his previous life. In his previous life, he was just a person doing odd jobs on the set. He had no right to attend Qin Jinan's wedding. This life was even worse than in his previous life. He was like a cripple who couldn't move at all. What was the point of his rebirth? God was playing with him, giving him a chance to prosper. He vowed solemnly and was full of confidence, but his hope was extinguished again. Studying until you're paralyzed. A sharp female voice came from outside the house. The whole family is scrimping to study. If you have the money, you might as well eat and drink. Look at how thin your family is. You spent so much money on a fool. Now you have to be supported for the rest of your life. You can't do anything and you're wasting food. When Yang Yuhui heard his sister-in-law's words, his face turned black. His mouth was crooked and his eyes were filled with disgust. He had also given his family more than 100,000 yuan. Why did they despise him for not being able to do anything? Yang Yuhui looked at his house. It was extremely shabby. The television was very small and the image was blurry. Yang Yuhui's eyes were filled with tears. Living like this was worse than death. But when he was really about to die, Yang Yuhui was terrified. He was reborn once. He didn't know if he could be reborn after death. Would this kind of thing happen to him again? If he could, Yang Yuhui wanted to return to the past. He wouldn't confess to Qin Jianan, who was like a plague. He wouldn't pass by an alley in the middle of the night and be harmed like this. Until now, Yang Yuhui didn't know who harmed him. He didn't even know who to hate. The heavens were unfair. That was why his rebirth was so tragic. Seeing Li Xinze and Qin Jianan get married, Yang Yuhui felt that all the tragic things in the world were concentrated on him. Qin Jianan and Li Xinze were in love during their honeymoon after their marriage. Qin Jianan wanted to continue acting after marriage, but Li Xinze hugged Qin Jianan from behind and said gently, "You just need to be a good Mrs. Li. I don't want you to suffer." Qin Jianan nodded sweetly. Everything in the house was tidied up nicely. From the selection of furniture to the arrangement of flowers, everything was done beautifully. She tried her best to make the house as warm and sweet as possible. Li Xinze always said that he was lucky to have a wife like Jia Nan. Qin Jianan smiled sweetly. When they went out, people always called Qin Jianan Mrs. Li. It seemed that very few people knew Qin Jianan's name. As the Li family's company grew bigger and bigger, Li Xinze's work became busier and busier. Basically, he did not return home for 24 hours a day. Qin Jianan stood at the door waiting for him. She often slept on the sofa until the wee hours of the morning. When she woke up, Li Xinze still hadn't returned. The entertainment news and magazines were all about the entertainment tycoon, Li Xinze, attending various events and bringing that female celebrity to a hotel. Some of it was true, but some of it was just groundless speculation. Qin Jianan felt mentally and physically exhausted. She couldn't help but ask Li Xinze if these things were true and if he had an ambiguous relationship with that female celebrity. Li Xinze denied it flatly. It was just his job and he was just putting on a show. Li Xinze told Qin Jianan not to think too much. Qin Jianan didn't know whether to believe Li Xinze or not. The entertainment industry was complicated. Maybe a female celebrity wanted to get close to Li Xinze and deliberately made up such news. Qin Jianan loved Li Xinze. In addition, she and Li Xinze had a spectacular wedding. It was so dazzling and happy. Many women were envious. Qin Jianan didn't want her happiness to disappear like this. She had to pretend to be happy. Until Fang Menghan called to provoke her and said that she and Li Xinze were at a hotel. The hotel was obvious. When Qin Jianan rushed over, Fang Menghan and Li Xinze were hugging each other on the bed. The reporters who followed Qin Jianan took a big picture. Qin Jianan realized that she was being photographed by the reporters. She closed the door and isolated the reporters outside. Fang Menghan covered her body with the quilt and smiled proudly and provocatively. Li Xinze rubbed his forehead and said softly, "Jianan." "Why?" Qin Jianan asked. Li Xinze didn't say anything. "You are just an old woman," Fang Menghan said with a sneer. Qin Jianan directly pulled the quilt from Fang Menghan's body. Fang Menghan quickly covered her body with her hands. Qin Jianan grabbed Fang Menghan's hair and the two of them started to fight. Their faces were full of scratches. It was as if they were mortal enemies. They didn't hold back at all. "That's enough. Look at you. Chen Jinan, stop fighting. Li Xinze separated the two of them. Chen Jinan looked at Li Xinze and felt that the man in front of her had become a stranger. Their love in the past was gone. She stole my husband. I really want to strangle her, Chen Jinan said as she cried. If you don't know what's good for you, I will divorce you. I don't know what the headlines will be tomorrow, Li Xinze said irritably as he rubbed his forehead. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu was really hurt by the sudden turn of events. They were able to support each other when they were in trouble, but in peace, their hearts were gradually separated. Li Xinze was a successful man in the entertainment industry. He was surrounded by beautiful women, and these beautiful women even took the initiative to offer themselves to him. The temptation was too great. Whether one could stay true to their heart depended on their will. Marriage was indeed the grave of love. The marriage between a princess and a prince might not be so happy. The prince would find a woman, and the princess would become a shrew. Chen Jinan used all her soul power to change her life, but she didn't expect that she and Li Xinze would end up like this. The next day, the whole world was filled with news about Chen Jinan and Li Xinze. The spectacular wedding of the century had become a joke. Fang Menghan even posted on Weibo that she and Li Xinze were true love. They had liked each other since they were students, and Chen Jinan was the third party. Chen Jinan was so angry that her head was about to explode. She directly released a few videos. They were videos of Fang Menghan cheating Yang Yuhui. The limelight changed. Fang Menghan became a green tea bitch. There were even police reports. These were all past events. Fang Menghan didn't know where Chen Jinan got the videos. She only knew that she was finished. Chen Jinan won the battle. But when she looked at Li Xinze's cold face, her heart turned cold. Chapter 838. This scene became more and more intense. In the end, Li Xinze had to step in and withdraw. She was the main character. This feeling was really unbearable. Li Xinze came home less and less. Their marriage existed in name only. In front of the media, Chen Jinan had to find an excuse for Li Xinze to tell the outside world that their relationship was very good. Chen Jinan swallowed all the bitterness and cried night after night like a resentful wife. Chen Jinan looked at herself in the mirror. She used to be so beautiful, but now she was melancholy and resentful. The corners of her mouth were so heavy that she couldn't smile. Was she going to waste her time like this? Was she going to hate Li Xinze like this? Was she going to tear apart countless women? It was too tiring. Chen Jinan tossed and turned for a few nights. After sorting out her emotions, she smiled and pushed the divorce agreement to Li Xinze. Li Xinze took a look and signed it. Seeing him sign it just like that, Chen Jinan's heart ached. Li Xinze asked Chen Jinan, "What do you want? I can make it up to you." Chen Jinan shook her head and said no need. Chen Jinan took her suitcase and left. She bought a plane ticket that day and went abroad. Abroad, Chen Jinan lived in a small room. Before dawn, she would eat sandwiches and look for roles on set in Hollywood. As long as there was a film that needed a Chinese face, no matter the size of the role, Chen Jinan would act. The hanging wire left marks on Chen Jinan's body. It was so hard that she wouldn't feel sad and self-pity for this failed marriage. Gradually, Chen Jinan received more and more roles. Chen Jinan, who had experienced all kinds of hardships, became more dazzling. When she flipped her hair in front of the camera, she was so beautiful. Even if her face was covered in dust, she was still so beautiful when she held a gun and fought. Her soul-stirring beauty was not the beauty of the face. When time really passed, the pain was actually nothing. People grew up to forget the pain and live for themselves. There was no need to guess where her husband went today. She was not affected by the gossip magazines. Chen Jianan wore a dress that outlined her beautiful figure to the Oscars. On the red carpet, she met Li Xinze. A female star held Li Xinze's arm. The two of them looked at each other. Chen Jianan didn't look away. "How are you?" "I'm good." Chen Jianan was very calm. Without Li Xinze, her life was more exciting. On the podium, Chen Jianan held the trophy and smiled brightly. Li Xinze looked at Chen Jianan. Chen Jianan was so beautiful that it made his heart tremble. She was so mesmerizing. Li Xinze stayed abroad and moved in next door to Chen Jianan. He tried his best to talk to Chen Jianan. Before dawn, he would run in front of Chen Jianan's door, hoping to meet Chen Jianan who was running. Chen Jianan just looked at Li Xinze indifferently. The worst way to win a man's heart was to be completely obedient. The best way to deal with him was to keep him at arm's length. The best way was to ask for it but not get it. Men were just wretches. Even if Li Xinze were to drink Chen Jianan's foot-washing water, Li Xinze would probably drink it. In this lifetime, Chen Jianan would never marry Li Xinze again. Once a person lost their respect and fear, they would not know how to cherish what they had. Li Xinze's attentiveness didn't affect Chen Jianan at all. Too many outstanding men had made promises to her, but Chen Jianan wouldn't easily entrust herself to others and let others control her destiny. Li Xinze's anxiousness had no effect on Chen Jianan at all. "It had nothing to do with me." Ning Shu was speechless. He sprained his waist again. Life was really full of twists and turns. Women had self-respect, self-improvement, and self-love. Women had to have their own careers. Only with an independent career could they have an independent personality and dignity. Don't put all your hopes on men. Love was a kind of chemical. After the chemical reaction, love would naturally disappear. How could one love a person deeply day and night without tiring? Ning Shu smacked his lips. Although this pair of true loves had separated, Chen Jianan's life could be considered a reversal. A woman's life wasn't just about marrying a good man. There were other kinds of success. Did a good man really exist? Ning Shu turned off the screen. He felt like he had watched a soul-stirring love story. No, the story of a woman's rise. If Ning Shu had to choose, he would rather live as a Chen Jianan with a free soul. Chen Jianan and Li Xinze's marriage, from the beginning, Chen Jianan regressed and became a housewife dependent on Li Xinze. It was a wrong beginning. Ning Shu let out a long breath. He moved his body and took a book from the bookshelf. He heard 2333 say, "Someone sent you a message." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and opened the chat system. It was a message from number 696, whom he had met in the virtual space before. "There's a collapsed plane repair mission. Do you want to come?" Ning Shu replied, "I'm an intermediate mission. Can I participate?" Ding dong. A message came from the other side. "Yes, you can. Come to the trading hall in the virtual space for the details. The reward is very rich. There's a lot of merit points for repairing collapsed planes." Ning Shu thought about it. He had always been a solo player. It would be good to meet some people this time. Now he had 10 million points. With another 10 million points, he could be promoted to a high-level mission taker. He could go to a high-level plane to collect resources that could make his secret book grow into a plane. If he didn't know something, he could ask others. Every time he asked the silver-haired man, he would be slaughtered. Ning Shu asked 2333, "What's the danger of a collapsed plane? You want to do this kind of mission?" 2333's voice was a little doubtful. "This kind of plane is very dangerous. The plot is very chaotic. You receive a plot. Maybe what happens in the plane is thousands of miles away from the plot you received." Ning Shu was speechless. However, Ning Shu still decided to give it a try. He exchanged for fasting pills, water, some basic medicine, and antidote pills from the system store. Thinking that this was a group mission, Ning Shu doubled the amount of fasting pills and water. Taking a deep breath, Ning Shu said, "Let's go to the virtual space." To be honest, Ning Shu was a little nervous to do a mission with other mission takers. After a moment of weightlessness, Ning Shu was already standing on the bluestone. "I wonder where the trading hall is?" Ning Shu wanted to ask someone. "Didn't you activate the GPS? 5 points of merit points are free." 2333 said. "Oh right, I forgot about the GPS." A little red dot appeared in Ning Shu's mind and told him how to get there. Ning Shu successfully arrived at the entrance of the trading hall. The trading hall was very big. The building was majestic and majestic. It was filled with a strong aura that made people hold their breath. There were people coming and going in the trading hall. Some people's souls were weak, some people's souls were solid. The aura on them was very strong. Chapter 839. There were people trading things in the trading hall. They were all strange things. Ning Shu learned from books that these were all good stuff. Ning Shu realized that he didn't have anything good. It was nothing compared to these people. But he had a spirit pearl. The spirit pearl was good stuff. Ning Shu didn't plan on exchanging it with others. 2333, over here. Mei Ziqing leaned against a pillar in the hall and waved at Ning Shu. Ning Shu lowered his head and pretended not to see her. 2333. Ning Shu, he hated this number. Ning Shu walked slowly towards Mei Ziqing. "Let's go upstairs." Mei Ziqing walked in front and Ning Shu followed behind her. The mission this time is about a high-level plane evolving into a superplane. "The laws are in chaos," Mei Ziqing said to Ning Shu. "There are a few people on this mission. When they ask for your name, just say your number. For example, my number is 696, Mei Ziqing said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. He was depressed. Her number. Mei Ziqing opened the door to a room. As soon as she opened the door, she heard an argument inside. "Aren't you here for that person? It's just a plane repair mission." "You came when you knew she was coming," a man said. He didn't look outstanding, his face was full of disdain. This disdain was obviously directed at the woman sitting opposite him. This woman was extremely beautiful. Her every move was elegant, and her eyes were stunning. She was wearing an exquisite ancient costume with long sleeves. Her hair was slightly tied up, and there was no jewelry on her body. She was ethereal and beautiful. It felt like no jewelry in the world was good enough for her. Ning Shu's eyes were glued to her. Beautiful, really beautiful. But she was very angry now. Her aura was strong. She said to the man coldly, "What do you mean? It's just a small conflict in the mission. Do you have to hold a grudge for so long?" He. The man's face was filled with disdain. "I don't talk to bitches." "What are you talking about? Watch your mouth. I'm a super mission enforcer, and you're just a little high-level mission enforcer," the woman said with a frown. Even when she was angry, she was still very beautiful. "Oh, a super prostitute who deceives her body, life, and heart," the man said fearlessly. "You, all right, stop arguing," someone at the side advised. Ning Shu, why was there such a fiery scene as soon as he entered? It seemed that the grudge between the two of them was not small. Mei Ziqing led Ning Shu in. The four people in the room looked at Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing. After looking around, Ning Shu's gaze finally stopped on a man. He really wanted to turn around and leave. "Fuck, why is Zhang Jiasen here? Why?" Zhang Jiasen saw Ning Shu and smiled at her. What a coincidence. Seeing Zhang Jiasen's fake smile, Ning Shu expressed that she did not want to play with Zhang Jiasen. Do you know each other? Mei Ziqing asked. Ning Shu shook her head. No. We do. Ning Shu rolled her eyes. Let me introduce you. The people in the room are mission enforcers. This is 496, a super mission enforcer. Mei Ziqing's gaze landed on the woman in ancient clothes. Hello. 496 just nodded his head indifferently. This is 2333, an intermediate mission enforcer. Mei Ziqing introduced Ning Shu. 2333. The man who had a conflict with 496 could not help but laugh. Your number is not bad. Ning Shu's mouth twitched. Thank you. If not for the fact that I can't beat you, I would have beaten you up long ago. Mei Ziqing introduced everyone in the room one by one, and finally introduced Zhang Jiasen. This is a beginner mission enforcer, 6457. Zhang Jiasen smiled and said, hello. Hello, Ning Shu said lightly. So Zhang Jiasen was a beginner mission enforcer. Ning Shu sat beside Mei Ziqing. The room was quiet, and no one spoke. Ning Shu also kept his mouth shut. Feeling that someone was looking at him, he turned his head and saw Zhang Jiasen looking at him and winking. Ning Shu turned his head expressionlessly, ignoring Zhang Jiasen. He whispered to Mei Ziqing, why can super mission enforcers and beginner mission enforcers participate in this mission? Actually, the roles are assigned differently. For example, if 496 went, she would be the main character, and we would all be supporting characters. According to the roles of the supporting characters, we would be assigned different levels. Ning Shu nodded. For someone like her, she was probably a passerby. Are we still waiting for someone? The atmosphere in the room was not good. Everyone was silent. How could they complete the mission with this kind of relationship? Yes, we are still missing one, Mei Ziqing said. Gotcha. The door handle turned. The female super mission enforcer was the first to stand up, staring at the door. The others also stood up. When Ning Shu saw that they had all stood up, she quickly stood up as well. The door slowly opened. A man in black stood in front of the door. His legs were very long, making the door look shorter. The corners of his black windbreaker fluttered slightly. Ning Shu was speechless. I don't want to do this mission. Zhang Jiasen aside, why is there a school doctor uncle too? The uncle looked around the room and finally stopped at 496, the super mission enforcer. You don't meet the requirements for this mission. You don't have to go. I can do it. This world is about to evolve into a super realm. It is already a super realm, but the realm is unstable, 496 hurriedly said, her expression anxious. Let me go. You, come and wipe the chair. The uncle looked at Ning Shu and pointed at the chair beside him. Wipe it clean. Ning Shu was speechless. Can't I wipe it myself? Everyone in the room looked at Ning Shu. Mei Ziqing elbowed Ning Shu. Go and wipe it clean. Feeling everyone's probing gazes, Ning Shu wanted to die. Ning Shu pinched his sleeves and wiped the chair with all his might. Then, he stood aside without a change in expression. The uncle sat down and said coldly, this mission is very dangerous. You will die. You may die several times in a row. If you don't want to go now, you can back out. Ning Shu heard the word death. What the hell is this? I don't have many protective talismans. Otherwise, I won't go. Ning Shu raised his hand. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Jiasen said, let's go together. Ning Shu, fuck off. I don't know you at all. The school doctor looked at Ning Shu indifferently. You're not going. Ning Shu was about to nod when Mei Ziqing nudged him. Ning Shu turned to look at Mei Ziqing. Mei Ziqing shook his head. Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck, can't you talk nicely? Ning Shu retracted his hand and said calmly, my arm hurts. Mei Ziqing heaved a sigh of relief. Ning Shu frowned. What's going on? Chapter 840. The Super Mission Enforcer kept looking at Ning Shu, frowning. Ning Shu said, do you not want to go? If you don't want to go, tell us now. We can find someone else. Could she really? Ning Shu was about to speak when Mei Ziqing poked her again. Ning Shu immediately said, I want to go. Don't force yourself if you don't want to go, the Super Mission Enforcer said. The Super Task Enforcer said. Her voice was so pleasant that even Ning Shu felt her heart go numb when she heard it. She was a beauty in a painting. She was natural and elegant. She was so beautiful that it was difficult to describe her. Just looking at such beauty would make people feel comfortable. Everyone liked beautiful things. I think she's suitable. You can come with us, the man who had a conflict with the Super Mission Enforcer said to Ning Shu. He was purposely angering the Super Mission Enforcer. Ning Shu saw that everyone in the room was looking at her. She couldn't back down now. If she really left, it would be awkward to meet these people in the future, especially Mei Ziqing who brought her here. Ning Shu shook her head. I'm not forcing you. I'm just afraid that I'll drag everyone down. The uncle pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses. You deserve to be killed if you're not strong enough. Just worry about yourself. It has nothing to do with the others. Ning Shu, what did he mean? Shouldn't everyone help each other? She didn't want to go. Let's start the mission. The uncle was the first to disappear, and the heavy atmosphere in the room immediately dissipated a lot. The atmosphere relaxed a little. Ning Shu wiped away her cold sweat and whispered to Mei Ziqing, who is this person? I heard that he's the first batch of mission enforcers. It's as if he's been here since the existence of this dimension. Mei Ziqing patted her chest. He has the right to kill ordinary mission enforcers. Damn, the uncle was older than she thought. After the uncle left, the Super Mission Enforcer disappeared too. She had entered the mission. Everyone in the room disappeared. Mei Ziqing said, you should enter the mission too. With that, Mei Ziqing disappeared. Only Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasen were left in the room. Zhang Jiasen asked, do you hate me? Yes. Ning Shu nodded and said to 2333 in his mind, enter the quest. Ning Shu disappeared from the room. Zhang Jiasen pursed his lips and disappeared as well. The previously crowded room was now empty. Ning Shu felt that he was entering a body, but he couldn't fuse with it for a long time. This was the first time Ning Shu had encountered such a situation. After squeezing into his body with great difficulty, Ning Shu opened his eyes and saw the mottled ceiling. There were also some traces of water soaking. Ning Shu looked left and right. There were a few girls lying on the big Kong bed, sleeping soundly. Ning Shu couldn't help but wrap himself in the blanket. He felt the chill seeping into his bones and the howling cold wind outside the window. Ning Shu was shivering from the cold. He sniffled and began to accept the plot. This body was called Tang Shimin and she was a second-year student. She was a member of the Chinese Art Society. During the winter break, more than 30 members of the Chinese Art Society gathered together. They said that they were going to a remote mountain village. In the end, all of the students died mysteriously. Everyone died, but no one knew who the murderer was. Moreover, everyone seemed to be trapped here. After they died, everything would start over again, and then everyone would die again. Moreover, the way they died was different from the first time. The way they died was different every time. But they still couldn't find the murderer. No one knew who the murderer was. The second time, everyone died again. It was an endless loop, and they were trapped here. It was like a movie. It played over and over again, but the content was different. So the mission this time was to end this endless game of death. Ning Shu sniffled. She was thinking about who could be the murderer. The first person she suspected was the president of the Chinese Art Society. Who would freeze someone to death in such a cold weather? There was snow everywhere. Why would he come to such a remote place to collect wind? Ning Shu was thinking in his heart. A girl sleeping next to him whispered to Ning Shu, "Is it a mission enforcer?" "Yes." Ning Shu quickly replied. 696, Mei Ziqing said. 2333. Mei Ziqing smiled to Ning Shu, "The two of us are really fated." Ning Shu asked Mei Ziqing, "Have you accepted the plot? If we can't complete this mission, are we going to be stuck here forever?" "Yes, that's very likely." Mei Ziqing couldn't help but rub his forehead. Ning Shu had encountered such a situation before. Mu Yenluo, who was the female lead of the novel, had been reborn over and over again. She had been reborn 3 times. But in this farmhouse, she had to start over and over again. This is so dangerous. Ning Shu was a little apprehensive. She had almost been replaced by Mu Yenluo's reincarnation. Mei Ziqing sighed and whispered, "It can't be helped. I've been stuck as a high-level mission enforcer for a long time. This mission will give me a lot of merit points." Ning Shu was bitter. If she knew it would be so dangerous, she wouldn't have come. She was only a mid-level mission enforcer. She thought that it would be easier to complete a mission in a group. She didn't expect it to be like this. "Wake up for breakfast." There was a knock on the door, followed by a man's voice. Ning Shu couldn't help but wrap herself in the blanket. It was so cold to wake up. 2333, wake up. Don't be alone. Mei Ziqing said to Ning Shu and went to call the other students. Every time Ning Shu heard 2333, she felt helpless. It felt like she was calling the system in her head. "My body is called Tang Shimen." "I'm Li Yuan," Mei Ziqing said. "Wake them up." Ning Shu pushed the student next to her and sat up. She picked up the woolen sweater and down jacket on the blanket and put them on. Ning Shu was already dressed, but the girl next to her still didn't move. She didn't even make a sound, nor did she respond to her. Ning Shu suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. She slowly reached out and turned her body around. She met a pair of eyes that were wide open. The pupils of the eyes were dilated as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. A brush was stuck in the other eye. Half of it was buried in the eye socket. Black and red blood mixed with grayish-white substances flowed out. The blood had already dried, indicating that she had been dead for a while. Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat. She covered her mouth and stared at the girl with wide eyes. Did that mean she had been lying next to a corpse for a long time? She had been given such a big shock as soon as she entered the realm. The other girls in the room screamed when they saw this horrifying scene. Their screams rose and fell one after another. Mei Ziqing frowned and checked the condition of the corpse. Ning Shu reached out and touched the corpse. The skin was still soft. It was probably under the blanket and kept warm. The corpse wasn't hard, but it was dead. Chapter 841. In the room, only Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing were calm. The other girls hugged each other, scared out of their wits. Ning Shu took out a notebook and a pen from his bedside bag and recorded the victim's condition. He wrote down the name and symptoms to see if there were any clues. Ning Shu observed carefully and found a name engraved on the brush. Pan Chen. It was a boy from the Chinese Arts Club. The boy entered the girl's room. How did he get in? The door was locked and couldn't be opened from the outside. Or was there an accomplice in the room? The brush was inserted into the victim's eyeball. Why didn't she struggle? The bed sheets weren't messy either. Someone must have tidied it up afterward. There was no movement. The 6 girls in the room didn't hear anything. Was she sleeping so soundly? Ning Shu sniffed. Could it be that there was some incense in the room? Or perhaps, he had been drugged. Mei Ziqing and Ning Shu shook their heads. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of someone knocking on the door rose and fell. What happened? Open the door. There was a commotion outside the door. Mei Ziqing was about to open the door when Ning Shu said, "Wait, I haven't put on my pants." Ning Shu put on his pants. Mei Ziqing opened the door and a swarm of young students rushed in. When they saw the person killed by the brush, their faces turned pale and the girls screamed. The one walking in front was a handsome young man. Although he was afraid when he saw this situation, he was much calmer than the others. He was the president, Fan Junyang, who suggested coming here to collect literature. Dead, dead, it's so scary. More than 30 people crowded the room. There was a large empty space near the bed. No one dared to go near the dead body. Teacher is here. An uncle in a black trench coat walked in. He walked to the corpse, put on medical gloves, and pulled out the brush from the eyeball. When he pulled it out, there was some blood on Ning Shu, who was standing beside the corpse. Ning Shu was speechless. The uncle checked the wound. When he saw Pan Chen's name, he asked calmly, "Who is Pan Chen?" "I." A fair-skinned, frail-looking boy stammered, "I didn't kill anyone." The school doctor twirled the tip of the brush and finally pulled out a needle from the brush. The uncle squinted his eyes slightly to size up the needle. Ning Shu recorded this situation. This needle was an ordinary embroidery needle, and it was stuck in the brush. This way, it would be faster to kill someone. The uncle glanced at Ning Shu's book and didn't say anything. "I really didn't kill anyone, it wasn't me." Pan Chen hurriedly shook his head. "Everyone's painting tools are placed together. Anyone could have taken them, but only mine." Pan Chen's face was red as he tried to defend himself. He did not even dare to look at the corpse on the Kong bed. The uncle said indifferently, "Carry the body down there." When they heard that they had to move the body, everyone was so scared that they scrambled out of the room. "Move away," the uncle said to Ning Shu, who was about to run away. "I'm a girl, I can't move it," Ning Shu said. The uncle took off his blood-stained gloves and threw them out of the window. Then, he turned around and left the room. Ning Shu was speechless. Why was she always the one who got hurt? Ning Shu carried the body down the stairs with difficulty. It was really scary to carry a dead person like this. Ning Shu had overestimated himself. This body did not practice any peerless martial arts, so it was not strong. When he carried it to the courtyard, he was so tired that he could not breathe. The snow on the ground was already up to his calves, and snow was falling from the sky. They could not walk at all, nor could they drive the car. Why did they have to court death? If they didn't court death, they wouldn't have died. He placed the body at the foot of the courtyard wall with difficulty. The girl was wearing thick silk pajamas. Her eye socket was black, and the other eye was wide open. It was very scary. Ning Shu thought about it and undid her clothes to check if there were any other wounds on her body. "Are you a pig?" The uncle's voice came from behind. "I only asked you to carry it down, I didn't ask you to carry it to the courtyard. The snow will cover the body. At least wait for me to dissect it before throwing it out." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu was speechless. He was the one who did not make it clear. If he did not take the body out, did he have to keep it at home and sleep with it? Ning Shu carried the body on his shoulders and carried it into the living room. The living room was very simple. There was only one table, and the table was made up of a few pieces of wood. There were 4 benches, and many people could not sit. They could only stand. When they saw Ning Shu carrying the body back, they said, don't put it here, we are scared. Many girls were so scared that they cried. Ning Shu could not even straighten his back. He carried more than 50 kilograms of body down the stairs, to the courtyard, and then back to the living room. It was very tiring. Teacher, what should we do? Should we call the police? Fan Junyang, the president of the Chinese Art Society, said to the uncle. His face was pale, and his pupils were trembling. It was obvious that he was holding on. The snow has sealed the mountain. Even if we call the police, they might not be able to get in. The signal here is not good. We can't even get through to the phone. A pretty girl said. She looked at the uncle and said, Teacher, what do you think we should do? The uncle pushed up his glasses and said, Do you want me to feed you? The girl's face turned red. She could not help but say, Teacher, it's me. The uncle was expressionless. Ning Shu looked at the pretty girl. He guessed that she was the super mission enforcer. After entering this body, the body's aura and charm had increased by a lot. Many boys were looking at her, but she was looking at the school doctor. Put the body on the table. The uncle said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu thought, why is it me again? He treated a girl like a coolie. There were so many people in the room. How could he order her around? Let me do it. A boy stood up and moved the body to the wooden table. Thank you. Ning Shu thanked him. You're welcome. We know each other. The boy smiled. Damn, it was definitely Zhang Jiasen. The uncle used a pair of medical scissors to cut off the clothes on the body, revealing the pale skin. The body was naked, revealing 2 lumps of flesh. Some of the boys could not help but blush. They slanted their eyes to take a peek. But it was another body. It was so embarrassing. The uncle held a silver scalpel and started to cut the skin from the chin. A straight line was drawn all the way to the crotch of the body. The uncle was wearing gloves. He used one hand to pull off the flesh on one side. With a tearing sound, the skin was peeled off. Red ribs with blood. The internal organs were clearly displayed in front of everyone. Everyone was speechless. Ugh, some of them were so scared that they ran upstairs and vomited. Ning Shu's eyelids were twitching. This guy was still so fierce. The others had entered other people's bodies. This guy actually appeared just like that. He even became a Chinese arts teacher. These club members were still convinced that this guy was a teacher. Which teacher would be so aggressive and not care about the students at all? Chapter 842. Ning Shu watched silently as the uncle put on a pair of gloves and reached into his stomach. He cut open his stomach and examined it carefully. Ning Shu swallowed her saliva. She was not used to this. Who do you think the murderer is? Zhang Jiasen asked Ning Shu. Everyone is a suspect. Ning Shu said calmly. Everyone who was in the same room as the deceased, including her and Mei Ziqing, were suspects. Perhaps the original owner had already killed the deceased before she entered this body. It was also possible that the people in the room worked together to kill the deceased. It could also be the owner of the paintbrush, Pan Chen. There were countless possibilities, so there was no way to be sure. Why did the club leader, Fan Junyang, choose such a place? Ning Shu looked out of the window. There were a few families around, and it was very quiet. Occasionally, a dog barked. There was no one in sight. Ning Shu could not figure out why the first person to die was someone close to her. The deaths were different every time, and the order was different. There was no pattern at all. Everyone in the Chinese Arts Club was a suspect, but everyone was in danger. Zhang Jiasen squinted his eyes. Could it be the power of ghosts? It shouldn't be the power of ghosts. Mei Ziqing shook her head. I have the psychic body, and there is no strange magnetic field around me. Ning Shu looked at Mei Ziqing in surprise. She did not expect Mei Ziqing to be so capable. Ning Shu thought for a while. She picked up Zhang Jiasen's hand and pinched it. Her fingers were stained with blood. She chanted a spell and smeared the blood on her eyelids. "TSK, your body isn't a virgin anymore." Ning Shu's expression was full of disdain, but she couldn't see anything. Ning Shu wiped the blood off her eyelids. The surroundings are very normal. These deaths were caused by someone. The uncle said calmly. "Throw the bodies out." The uncle took off his gloves and threw them on the bodies. Then, he took out the antiseptic spray and sprayed it on his hands. "What's going on?" An old woman came out from the room next to the central room. This old woman had a stooped figure, many age spots on her face, and snow-white hair. Beside him was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. The girl was tugging on the corner of the old woman's clothes. The girl was wearing a thick cotton coat. Her eyes were very strange. Her pupils were small black dots, and the rest of her eyes were gray. Her eyes seemed to be covered with a thin layer of shadow. This. When the old woman saw the corpse with its internal organs exposed on the table, she was so scared that she staggered. "What are you doing?" "Leave, you're not welcome here." The old woman looked flustered. "Grandma, what's wrong?" The girl tugged at the old woman's clothes tightly. "How can you kill people in my house?" "Leave, you will suffer retribution for this." The old woman raised her walking stick. "Granny, we didn't kill this person," said the super task enforcer Lu Shanshan gently. "I don't care, you can't stay in my house anymore." The old woman waved her hands, her expression firm. Lu Shanshan frowned and said to the blind girl, "Sister, it's snowing so hard that we can't leave. Please let us stay here. We really didn't kill this person." The girl tugged at the old woman's clothes. "Grandma, let them stay here. There have never been so many people in the house." "Girl, you didn't see what they did." The old woman looked anxious. "We'll pay 5 times the accommodation fee," Lu Shanshan said. "Grandma, with this money, I can go to the hospital to get my eyes treated," the girl said excitedly. The old woman sighed and didn't say anything. Lu Shanshan made a V sign to the school doctor uncle. The uncle's expression was very indifferent. He stared at his hands, not even a speck of dirt could be found under his fingernails. Ning Shu carefully observed the pair of grandmother and granddaughter. They were the owners of this house. It was said that the blind girl had an eye disease since she was young. She was born blind. Her parents had gone out to work and had not returned for many years. There was no news of them. No one knew if they were dead or not. The old woman's husband had died a long time ago. The grandmother and granddaughter depended on each other. The president, Fan Junyang, chose this house because it was the only 2-story house in the neighborhood. There were 32 people in the club. Although it was a 2-story house, it was very old. "Throw the body out," the uncle said indifferently. Ning Shu couldn't bear to look at the body with its internal organs exposed. He reached out to drag the body. Mei Ziqing held his hand. "Let me help you." The two of them stepped into the snow and carried the body to the foot of the courtyard wall. Ning Shu stuffed snow into the abdomen of the corpse and then covered the body with snow to slow down the rate of decomposition. Mei Ziqing piled snow on the body. Ning Shu said, "Who do you think will be the next person?" "I don't know." They didn't know how the murderer killed them or why they killed them. They didn't know the motive or the method. Everyone was a suspect. Ning Shu used the snow to wipe the blood off his hands. He suddenly asked Mei Ziqing, "You said you were psychic. Can you see the souls of the dead?" Mei Ziqing shook her head. "No, I can't feel anything. Everyone had a soul. How could the souls of the dead dissipate so quickly?" Ning Shu's brain was a mess. Was his IQ really that low? The snow was getting heavier. After a while, Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing's bodies were covered in snow. Mei Ziqing pulled Ning Shu into the room. There were a few people sitting around a table in the living room. They were all mission enforcers and were discussing something. Everyone had their own thoughts and slowly sorted out the situation. Ouch, I'm getting a mouth ulcer. A guy covered his mouth with a helpless expression. The guy looked at Ning Shu and said, I heard that the girl's saliva can treat mouth ulcers. Ning Shu shook his head and said, there's no scientific basis for this. Why were they talking about this in such a serious situation? Lu Shanshan was obviously prettier. Why didn't they ask for Lu Shanshan's saliva but ask for hers? Was this body also pretty? Looking at his sloppy appearance, it was obvious that he was 795, who had insulted the super mission enforcers and called them super prostitutes. Give me some of your saliva, will you? It hurts so much. Just a touch of my tongue hurts, 795 said Ning Shu. Ning Shu was really annoyed. With a click, she spat out a mouthful of phlegm on the table. Go ahead and lick it, 795, everyone else. The uncle looked at Ning Shu with a murderous look. Wipe it clean. Ning Shu wiped the sputum off her mouth with a piece of tissue paper. 795 didn't ask Ning Shu for her saliva anymore. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu silently. His eyes were deep. No one knew what he was thinking. Ah, someone died. Chapter 843. A terrified scream came from outside the house. The few people in the house hurried out. This time, the corpse was in a simple toilet in the backyard. In rural areas, toilets were built in the backyard. A girl's face was pale and terrified. She vomited loudly. Ning Shu walked over and looked into the cesspool. She saw a corpse floating in the cesspool with its face facing upwards. Its face and head were covered in filth. Her face was twisted and her mouth was slightly open. There was dirty water in her mouth. Ning Shu felt his stomach churning. He wanted to vomit. She died in the cesspit. Ning Shu said, tell me the situation later. He turned and left. Lu Shanshan also left with her mouth covered. The other club members who rushed over vomited together. One person led a group of people to vomit. He had already died when he woke up in the morning. He hadn't even had a bite of breakfast. Now, he was dead again. It was the same way. He had vomited until there was nothing left in his stomach. How did this happen? Fan Junyang scratched his head. His eyes were red. Fan Junyang was under a lot of pressure. These people were brought here by him. Now, 2 of them had died. Was this the beginning or the end? 2 deaths in a row made everyone uneasy and afraid. A restless and tense feeling surged in everyone's heart. If there was any more commotion, they would lose control. Ning Shu used a piece of paper to block his nostrils. He poked the corpse with a tree branch and measured the depth of the cesspit. It wasn't very high. If she had fallen, she would have been able to stand up. She wouldn't have suffocated. Did someone hold her down and drown her in the cesspit? Or did they kill her first and throw her into the cesspit? There was no way to do an autopsy like this. Even a normal person wouldn't be able to stand it, let alone a misophobic uncle. Mei Ziqing frowned. No soul. If there was no soul, it meant that the person wasn't dead. If she was dead, then her soul must have dissipated. How did it dissipate so quickly? Zhang Jiasen squatted beside Ning Shu. He stared at the corpse in the cesspit and said, I still feel that this isn't a purely human action. An unnatural force. Ning Shu poked at the corpse. There were some clues on this person. Let's drag him up, Ning Shu said. Mei Ziqing's face was full of disdain. Don't. Ning Shu pushed the corpse in front of him and gripped the corpse's clothes. Suddenly, he felt a sticky sensation on his hands. Ning Shu felt extremely disgusted. He pulled the corpse up with all his might. Immediately, a foul smell of feces seeped into the snow. Zhang Jiasen and Mei Ziqing immediately distanced themselves from Ning Shu. Ning Shu rubbed his hands in the snow and picked up a branch to pull at the corpse's clothes. The chest and arms of the deceased had been bitten by something. There were deep scratches on them, and they were beyond recognition. There was a big hole in his chest, and his heart was gone. Ning Shu. Mei Ziqing hurried over. Your heart is gone. What kind of animal did this bite and scratch? Ning Shu looked at the bite and scratch marks. A dog, a large dog, Zhang Jiasen guessed. Ning Shu frowned. Being bitten like this, digging a big hole in the chest, and then digging out the heart, this was most painful. However, they did not hear anything at all. Moreover, this pair of grandfather and grandson did not have a dog. Where did the murderer find the time to commit the crime? Ning Shu couldn't help but feel dizzy. She was too dizzy. Ning Shu used the snow to bury the corpse. It was too disgusting, and he did not want to look at it again. The central room was full of people. The moment Ning Shu walked in, he smelled feces. The uncle pointed at Ning Shu. Stand at the door. Ning Shu. I have something to say, Ning Shu said. To be honest, his mysophobia was really annoying. There are scratches and bites on her body. She might have been bitten to death by an animal, Ning Shu said. Where is the fatal wound? The heart is gone. Carnivorous ferocious beasts always attack the weak and vital parts. The uncle pointed at his neck with his slender fingers. This is the most vital part. The heart is also protected by the chest. This place cannot be killed in a single move. Ning Shu's eyes darted around. This meant that the victim might not have really been bitten to death by an animal, and the wound might have been man-made. What if there were claws and scratches on the victim's body? Teacher, what should we do? President Fan Junyang asked the uncle. Let's leave this place. The uncle said indifferently, where do you think we should go? Do you have a plane at home? The snow was getting heavier and heavier, and it did not stop. There was no way to drive. Fan Junyang's face was ashen. The tall and handsome him suddenly became hunched, looking very dispirited. Quite a number of girls started crying, and someone even pointed at Fan Junyang. Why did you bring us to such a godforsaken place? You just want to kill us. The moment these words came out, the girls cried even more sadly. Although the boys did not cry, they were out of their wits. Their expressions were fearful, and their faces were pale. The timid ones were so scared that their bodies started trembling. Fan Junyang's expression turned even uglier. He could not help but say, Pan Chen recommended me to come to this place. Everyone looked at Pan Chen. I saw the news on the internet. It said that the scenery here is not bad, especially the snow in winter. You must be the murderer. Your name is on the brush, and you were the one who found this place. A girl pointed at Pan Chen. Pan Chen was a delicate and weak boy. When he was accused and looked at by so many people, his fair skin flushed red. He hurriedly waved his hand and said in a panicked voice, I didn't kill anyone. I really didn't kill anyone. The central room was filled with a suffocating atmosphere of panic. No one knew if there would be more deaths. Would it be the people around them who died, or would it be them? Grumble. Ning Shu's stomach growled. He had not eaten anything since he woke up in the morning, and he had been doing physical labor. Many people's stomachs also growled. Fan Junyang left the central room and went to the kitchen to look for the grandmother and granddaughter to make breakfast. After a while, the old woman made black steamed buns, some pickles, and cornmeal porridge. Everyone had porridge and a steamed bun, and there was nothing else. The food in the countryside was not good to begin with. In addition, it was winter, so there were not many vegetables. Moreover, there were not enough bowls and chopsticks. They had to wait for others to finish eating before washing the bowls and serving the porridge. Ning Shu had fished the body out of the manure pit, so no matter how he washed it, there was a stench. Ning Shu planned to go to the kitchen to get some ash to wash his hands. In this situation, he should have taken a bath. However, it was cold and the bathroom was drafty. It was simply freezing to death. Ning Shu walked into the kitchen and saw the blind girl sitting in front of the stove. Her eyes were blank, and her small pupils looked particularly strange. She touched the firewood beside her and stuffed it into the stove. Ning Shu pursed his lips and walked over. "I'll get some ash to wash my hands." "Oh, okay." Lon was stunned for a moment before saying, "There's ash in the stove next to it." Chapter 844. Ning Shu walked around Lon and used a wooden stick to scoop out the dust from another hole. "This is for you." Lon passed the poker to Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at the poker and then at Lan's face, which was illuminated by the fire. Ning Shu looked at the poker. Lon uneasily retracted her hand. "Are you afraid of me?" "No." Ning Shu took the poker. "Thank you." Ning Shu washed his hands with water mixed with herbs. After washing his hands, he smelled them. There was no smell of feces on his hands, but the smell on his body was still there. Ning Shu looked at Lon and asked, "Have you eaten?" Lon smiled, as if she was happy that Ning Shu took the initiative to talk to her. She said, "Not yet. Grandma said we should wait for you to finish eating." Lan's voice had a heavy accent. Ning Shu could barely hear her. "You're here." Mei Ziqing walked in and gave Ning Shu a black steamed bun. Ning Shu thanked her with a smile and nibbled on the steamed bun. Mei Ziqing glanced at Lon and said, "The teacher asked you to go over." "Oh." Ning Shu followed Mei Ziqing out of the kitchen. He turned around and saw Lon looking in their direction. Her eyes were empty. Her eyes were not focused at all. Ning Shu walked into the living room and asked the uncle, "Why are you looking for me?" "You'll be on night watch tonight," the uncle said. "Two people together. Who do you want to be with?" Ning Shu was speechless. Nothing good came out of being called. Why didn't he ask her to eat? Ning Shu really wanted to spit on his face. "I'll go with her." Mei Ziqing stood beside Ning Shu and said. Ning Shu was touched. He held Mei Ziqing's hand tightly. "Sister, you're so cute." The uncle glanced at Ning Shu. However, Lu Shanshan said, "When did you two become so close? It's not safe for two girls to keep watch at night." "I'll keep watch tonight," Zhang Jiasen said. Ning Shu, no matter what Zhang Jiasen did or said, Ning Shu felt that he was up to no good. "No need, just the two of us are enough." Ning Shu refused. The uncle said aloud, "Try not to go out at night. Don't go out alone and give the murderer a chance." "Yes, sir." As soon as the uncle spoke, these people were as obedient as primary school students. No one could skin them and cut their internal organs without batting an eyelid like their instructor. Ning Shu went upstairs to get a notebook. He recorded everything down and then slowly straightened it out. Ning Shu felt like his head was about to explode from this kind of test of intelligence. Seeing that the mission enforcers were all calm and composed, Ning Shu felt very flustered. An indescribable panic. His mind was in a daze. Fuck, it felt like his brain was on fire. Ning Shu climbed onto the bed and took out a notebook from the bedside bag. One of them was stabbed through the eye by a writing brush. There was an embroidery needle in the brush. They were all students. It was impossible for them to carry embroidery needles with them. Besides, these students couldn't mend their own clothes. Then the embroidery needle must have belonged to the old woman. If the wound on the other person was really like what the uncle said, and he wasn't bitten to death by an animal, then there must be a tool. Where was the tool hidden? No matter how he looked at it, it was a crime committed by someone familiar with this house. 2333, something happened again. Mei Ziqing walked in and said to Ning Shu with a bad expression. Ning Shu hurriedly got down from the bed and asked, "Who is it?" "Pan Chen." Ning Shu hurried to the crime scene. Pan Chen was dead at the door of the room. The back of his head was knocked against the door frame. The back of his head was bleeding all over the floor. This kind of mud house in the countryside had a threshold. Pan Chen was lying on the floor, motionless. The uncle wore gloves and checked Pan Chen's head. Who was last with Pan Chen? The uncle's face was very stern. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. A boy whispered, he said he wanted to go back to his room to get something. I said, "Don't be alone. Is your brain full of shit?" The uncle took off his gloves and pressed his hand on his waist. Everyone was trembling with fear. Ning Shu frowned. Pan Chen was the most suspicious person. He was the one who suggested coming here. The brush was his. Now, Pan Chen was dead. The most suspicious person was dead. Now, anyone could be the murderer. The president, Fan Junyang, leaned against the wall. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. He couldn't suppress his panic, but he forced himself to calm down and said, "In the future, if anyone wants to go anywhere, let's go together." His voice was trembling. There's a ghost, there's a ghost. I don't want to stay in this godforsaken place. A girl broke down and shouted as she stumbled down the stairs. Lin Xia, don't run around. Fan Junyang shouted at the girl. But Lin Xia covered her head and ignored Fan Junyang. She ran away in an instant. Ning Shu and a few mission enforcers quickly chased after her. When they got out of the courtyard, they saw Lin Xia running in the snowstorm. Hurry up, or you'll get lost. 795 frowned and said, "We're already at a disadvantage in this mission. 3 people died in a row. Now, we don't even have a clue about the murderer." 795 cursed. Damn, I don't want to die again and again. She's gone. Ning Shu said helplessly. Lin Xia's figure was gone. Only the snowflakes were blown around by the cold wind. Even her footprints were covered by the snow. 795 shrugged and turned to walk back. Go back. She's dead. She would either starve to death or freeze to death. Ning Shu also turned and looked at the vast expanse of whiteness. Do you remember the direction? Everyone was speechless. 795 walked in front. His fingers moved quickly as if there was an invisible thread wrapped around his hand. Follow me. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes. He didn't see anything in 795's hand either. It was probably some kind of treasure. The few of them followed behind 795 unsteadily. Ning Shu touched his stomach. The black steamed bun in the morning wasn't enough to fill his stomach. Now, he was hungry again. Ning Shu took out a few fasting pills and asked, "Do you want some?" "Give me 2. I'm starving." 795 stretched out his hand. "There's no spit on it, right? You're so disgusting. I can't eat anymore." Mei Ziqing took one and threw it into his mouth. Ning Shu gave 795 2 pills and gave one each to Zhang Jiasen and another mission enforcer. "Thank you." Zhang Jiasen thanked Ning Shu. "No need." Every time he saw Zhang Jiasen acting like a human, Ning Shu's hair stood on end. After eating the fasting pills, his body warmed up and he wasn't hungry anymore. Lu Shanshan didn't come. Ning Shu looked around. 795's face was full of disdain. She wouldn't do such a hard thing. She only needs to use her body to conquer men and make them do things. Ning Shu, it seemed that the grudge between the two of them wasn't small. It made a man hate a woman so much. How can a person who doesn't even know how to build a world be a super mission enforcer? 795's tone was full of contempt. Chapter 845. Building a World. Ning Shu memorized this in his heart. What was this? 795, a high-level mission enforcer, actually had such an attitude towards a super mission enforcer. When they returned to the house, there was a thick layer of snow on their bodies. Ning Shu helped Mei Ziqing brush off the snow on his collar. You didn't get her back. The uncle's expression was indifferent and his tone was light. He didn't care about a life at all. 795 shrugged his shoulders. She couldn't have escaped. Instructor, let's go and look for her. Something must have happened to Lin Xia, Fan Junyang said anxiously. She and Pan Chen are the best members of the Chinese Arts Club. They are going to participate in the national competition this year. Fan Junyang's face was pale. A few people had died. 2 of the top students in Chinese arts were also in trouble. The uncle said indifferently, then go and look for her. I won't stop you. I can't guarantee that she will come back. If there's nothing else, stay in the house. Don't walk around. The uncle held a shiny scalpel in his hand. Fan Junyang looked outside the house. The sky was dark and there were thick clouds. Even if he didn't know the weather, he knew that the snow would get heavier. Instructor, we'll stay with you, Fan Junyang said. Everyone stayed in the central room, making it seem very crowded. Some girls were sobbing softly and huddled together. Instructor, do you have any clues? Uncle Ning Shu asked. The uncle stared at the old woman who came in with a brazier. Lon was behind the old woman and tugging on her clothes. Did the uncle suspect the old woman and Lon? Take it out. The house is dirty with so many people. Don't bring the brazier in, the uncle said. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, I thought the uncle suspected the old woman and her granddaughter to be the murderer. The central room is ventilated. The brazier will be warmer. The old woman put down the brazier and the charcoal crackled. Ning Shu's nose twitched and he smelled a refreshing aroma. It was the refreshing aroma of wood. He couldn't help but ask, what is this? It smells so good. This is fragrant twig wood. The wood has a fragrance, Lon said to Ning Shu, but she didn't look at Ning Shu. Her eyes were unfocused. Ning Shu sniffed carefully, but there didn't seem to be any strange smell. The old woman sighed. I wanted to drive you away, but now there's going to be a blizzard. Thank you, old man, Fan Junyang said immediately. Lunch was still black flour steamed buns, porridge, and pickled vegetables. The leaden clouds in the sky became lower and lower, and the sky darkened a lot. Because everyone was gathered in the central room, the afternoon was very peaceful, and nothing happened. The cold wind was blowing, and after dinner everyone in the main room was shivering with cold. Fan Junyang said to the uncle, Tutor, it's too cold. We want to go to the con. We won't be alone. The middle-aged man nodded. A few mission enforcers stayed behind and sat around the table. 795 said, let me talk about my point of view first. There is more than one murderer. Lu Shanshan sneered, where's the evidence? Almost everyone has an alibi. They must have colluded with each other. Lu Shanshan whispered, I think there's something wrong with this pair of grandmother and grandson. Someone in the club must have something to do with them. Every time the old woman scooped porridge for Fan Junyang, it was drier than the others, Lu Shanshan said. Fan Junyang was always the first to be scooped. They're not related to Fan Junyang. Why is she so special to him? Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. No wonder she was a super mission enforcer. No matter how much 795 despised her, she still had some skills. Ning Shu remembered everything she said. The middle-aged man grunted, "What else?" Zhang Jiasen said, "This pair of grandmother and grandson don't look like poor people. This table is made of yellow pear wood." Zhang Jiasen tapped the table with his finger. Ning Shu looked at the table. Before, he thought it was made of a few pieces of wood, and it was a little greasy. Now, the texture was clear and beautiful. Ning Shu raised his doubts. What if they don't know the value of yellow pear wood? The villagers didn't know and used antique bowls to feed dogs. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. Yellow pear wood is produced in the South China Sea. It's a hot place, and there aren't many of them. Yellow pear wood is mainly imported. This isn't the place where it's produced. It's impossible that they went to the mountains to cut down trees and cut down yellow pear wood. Ning Shu, 0, damn, I feel like I'm retarded. Ning Shu wrote it down in his notebook. This pair of grandmother and grandson had something to do with it. If they really wanted to harm the people from the Chinese Arts Club, they had to have a reason. They couldn't kill people for no reason. The middle-aged man stood up. Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing said, "You guys keep watch tonight." After the middle-aged man left, Lu Shanshan also left. The others yawned and left. Only Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing were left in the central room 696. "Did you find anything?" Ning Shu asked. "A girl is pregnant," Mei Ziqing said softly. Ning Shu. "How do you know?" Ning Shu asked curiously. "There's an extra soul in her body." "It's very weak," Mei Ziqing said. "I'm very sensitive to things like souls. She's pregnant when she's still a student." "Who's the father? Is he also from the Chinese Arts Club?" "There's a lot of discord in this team." Ning Shu and Mei Ziqing sat together. The cold wind whistled outside, making the whole world seem even quieter. There was no sign of life at all. Ning Shu stretched out his hand and warmed it in the brazier. Then, he prepared to cultivate his ultimate martial arts. Since he woke up in the morning, he had been overwhelmed by what had happened. "Someone's here." Mei Ziqing quickly opened the door. Ning Shu also saw a shadow flash by the window. Mei Ziqing ran to the backyard. Ning Shu picked up the flashlight and chased after Mei Ziqing. He saw Mei Ziqing standing under a tree. Ning Shu walked over and asked Mei Ziqing, "Did you find anything?" Mei Ziqing didn't say anything. Ning Shu stretched out his hand and touched Mei Ziqing. Mei Ziqing's body fell down, and blood spurted out from her neck. Ning Shu was shocked. He took a step forward, but his neck was cut by something. Ning Shu reached out and touched it. His neck was wet. Ning Shu shone the flashlight and found that he had touched a thread as thick as a strand of hair. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't have noticed it. Mei Ziqing was in a hurry, and her neck bumped into the thread. The thread sank into her neck. This thread was extremely tough. Ning Shu tried to pull it, but he couldn't break it. Instead, the thread cut into his palm. Only a sharp blade could kill. A familiar person suddenly died in front of him. Just a moment ago, they were still talking and laughing. Now, there was no sign of life. He suddenly understood the fear of the club members. Mei Ziqing fell into a pool of blood. Ning Shu's limbs were numb, and his head was buzzing. He didn't know if she would be killed. She should have a way to avoid being killed. Gotcha. There was the sound of feet stepping on the snow. Ning Shu looked up and saw a black shadow rushing towards him. Chapter 846. A black shadow rushed over. Before Ning Shu could react, a thread was wrapped around her neck. The black shadow tightened its grip around the tough thread from behind. Ning Shu's hands gripped the silk thread tightly. The silk thread dug into her knuckles and sunk deep into her flesh. Ning Shu felt that the bones in her hands were about to be broken by the silk thread. It was excruciating. No matter how painful it was, Ning Shu didn't dare to let go. If she did, her neck would suffer the same pain as Mei Ziqing, who was lying on the ground. Half of her neck had been severed by the thread. The two bodies were tightly pressed together. She could even feel the hot breath of the person behind her. The smell of fragrant wood mixed with the biting cold wind entered her nostrils. Cough, cough. Ning Shu coughed and said with difficulty, "Zhang Jiasen, it must be you." The hand holding the thread paused for a moment, then increased its strength. The thread dug deeper into her flesh, and blood dripped onto the ground. The approaching death made Ning Shu's hair stand on end. She was terrified and in despair. Ning Shu's face turned red. She raised her leg to step on the person behind her, but a kick landed on her calf. She immediately felt a piercing pain. She had only been in this world for a day. There was no time to practice ultimate martial arts. In one day, 3 people had died. There was no time to rest. She was now at a disadvantage. She didn't even have the chance to fight back. From beginning to end, the person behind her didn't say a word. However, Ning Shu clearly felt that it was a man. First, it was because of his strength. Second, the angle of his neck. If he was taller than her, the thread would be pulled up slightly. Creak. The sound of a window opening suddenly sounded. Ning Shu turned to look at the second floor with bloodshot eyes. There was a weak light in the room. A black shadow stood by the window. Ning Shu coughed violently. "Uncle, help." The person behind her didn't run away immediately. Instead, he increased his strength and tightened his grip. The thread dug deeper into his palm. The uncle pulled out a gun from his waist and fired a shot behind Ning Shu. With a plop, the person behind Ning Shu fell to the ground. His body twitched twice before he stopped breathing. Ning Shu immediately fell onto the snowy ground, but before she could rejoice, a voice entered her soul. No matter what grudges you have, if you start an internal conflict during this mission, you will all be eliminated. Ning Shu watched helplessly as the man fired a shot at her with the black gun barrel. Her body seemed to be fixed in place by some kind of force. She didn't even have the strength to move. A soundless force entered her glabella. Ning Shu suddenly felt a huge force explode in her soul, wanting to annihilate her soul. The power of the amulet protected Ning Shu. The pain in his soul made Ning Shu sweat profusely. When he woke up, his soul was still in pain. Sweating profusely, Ning Shu shivered as the cold wind blew. She got up from the ground and flipped over the man's body. It was indeed Zhang Jiasen. Damn it, Ning Shu was so aggrieved that she almost cried. She was almost killed, and now she was killed again. If it wasn't for the upgraded version of the amulet, she would have to wait for everyone to die this time and restart the plot again. The feeling of being killed scared Ning Shu so much that she peed her pants. She was completely annihilated. Despair and pain. Zhang Jiasen, this bastard who harmed others without benefiting himself. Ning Shu kicked Zhang Jiasen's body on the ground and ran into the central room weakly. The fire in the brazier in the central room had already been extinguished. Ning Shu sat on the bench and placed her hands on the table. Her hands were dripping with blood. A silk thread had sunk into her flesh. Scarlet flesh flew everywhere. Ning Shu carefully took out the silk thread. This silk thread was very thin but very tough. Where did Zhang Jiasen come from? If Zhang Jiasen possessed the original owner of this body, then this person was also a suspect. Zhang Jiasen used the silk thread to deal with her. She knew that Zhang Jiasen would definitely take revenge on her. She wanted to fish in troubled waters and kill her. Ning Shu took out the silk thread. Blood flowed out. Fortunately, she had exchanged for medicine before entering the mission. Ning Shu sprinkled the medicine powder on the wound and wrapped it with gauze. However, both of her hands were injured, so it was very inconvenient to wrap the gauze. The door of the room next to the central room opened. Lan walked out using the wall. Her nose twitched. "You're injured." Ning Shu grunted. Lan reached out and sat down at the table. "How did you get injured? Were you alone?" Ning Shu saw that Lan was staring at one place. Her eyes were not focused. She was clearly talking to him, but she was looking in another direction. "There's another one dead." Ning Shu looked at Lan's expression. Lan just pursed her lips. Her reaction was very calm. Ning Shu could not help but ask, "You're not afraid?" Lan shook her head. "I can't see, I can't feel. I can't see the beautiful things, and I'm also isolated from the scary things. I know someone died, but I don't feel afraid," Lan said honestly. Ning Shu did not know what to say. Lan could not see and did not even know how many people there were. She did not feel anything if 1 or 2 people were missing. However, several people in her family had died. She was not afraid. Ning Shu took the anti-inflammatory medicine. He was afraid that it would be tetanus. Lan asked Ning Shu, "Are you seriously injured?" "It's okay. I won't die." Ning Shu said indifferently. "Grandma said that you guys should leave tomorrow. She said that you guys have provoked evil spirits. They won't stop until you die. We will also be implicated." Lan said. Ning Shu pursed his lips and did not speak. The cold wind outside the house blew even more fiercely. The cold wind blew through the cracks in the door and into the house. It was bone-chilling. Ning Shu saw that Lan was not wearing much and said, "Go to sleep. It's very cold." "Thank you." Lan stood up and reached out her hand to feel around. "Didn't you go to the hospital to have your eyes checked?" Ning Shu asked aloud. Lan touched the wall and said, "We don't have money at home." Ning Shu looked at the table made of yellow pear wood. This thing was worth a lot. This was not the origin of yellow pear wood. Moreover, these few pieces of yellow pear wood were put together to form a table. It was probably a tree that was over 100 years old. This pair of grandmother and granddaughter were really problematic. Selling this table would be enough for them to go to the hospital. Ning Shu changed his medicine twice. It was very cold in the living room. Mei Ziqing was dead and there was no one around to talk to. Ning Shu took 2 stools and put them together. He sat cross-legged on the stools and began to practice his ultimate martial arts. If she had a little bit of resistance, she would not have been choked by Zhang Jiasen. It was important to have the ability to protect herself. The uncle killed people mercilessly with a gun and did not even listen to an explanation. She did not have the strength. If he had enough strength, he would not bother to listen to an aunt's explanation. Chapter 847. Ning Shu finally understood what Mei Ziqing meant when he said that first-generation mission enforcers had the right to kill ordinary mission enforcers. If she was strong enough, if that perverted uncle wanted to kill her, she would have to kill him first. Without power, there would be no dignity or right to speak. Only the strong would be respected. After a night of cultivation, a small amount of Qi Jin appeared in her energy center. Her body was much warmer, and her hands and feet were much more comfortable. The wound that was tied by the silk thread was also itchy and red. Ning Shu took a few anti-inflammatory pills to prevent fever and inflammation. The uncle and 795 came downstairs. Ning Shu saw the uncle and quickly lowered her head. She could only see his slender legs and the slightly floating corner of his windbreaker. Step by step, he walked down the stairs. It was as if he was stepping on her heart, making it difficult for her to bear. She was afraid of this person. Ning Shu took a deep breath and chanted the clear heart mantra in her heart, suppressing the negative emotions in her heart. One day, she would become strong, and one day, she would take her revenge and kill him once and for all. Ning Shu fantasized for a while. Damn, 2 more people died in one night. And they were mission enforcers? 795 shrugged. This mission is simply bullshit. Ning Shu was speechless. If it wasn't for the upgraded version of the amulet, 3 people would have died. Damn, it would take a lot of merit to exchange for an upgraded version of the amulet. Ning Shu's heart was stuffed to the brim. She was about to cry again as she spoke. Wipe the stool. Ning Shu waved his hand. Ning Shu smiled and raised his messy hand. My hand is lame. Damn, you just killed her once, and now you're asking her to do things again. Do you have any shame? Don't you feel guilty? 795 thought for a while. She used her but to move a few times on the stool. She stood up and said to the uncle, I've wiped it. You can sit. The uncle glanced at him. He didn't sit on the chair he had just sat on. Instead, he sat on the chair next to him. How did 696 and 6,457 die? 795 asked. It was extremely safe to be in the same room as boss. 795 directly fell asleep. What happened last night? This guy doesn't know anything. Ning Shu glanced at the uncle and said, 696 was killed by 6457. To be precise, it was Zhang Jiasen who wanted to kill her. Mei Ziqing was too anxious and was accidentally killed. Ning Shu could feel that Mei Ziqing was very anxious. He was probably in a hurry to catch the culprit and end this mission so that he could gain merit and become a high-level mission enforcer. It was easy to make mistakes when he was anxious. 795 raised his eyebrows. Did you kill 6,457? Ning Shu shook his head. He glanced at the indifferent uncle and said, was he killed? 795 couldn't help but glance at the uncle. He pulled Ning Shu out of the house and asked, what's going on? Ning Shu told 795 the whole story. 795 couldn't help but shake his head. He should have been killed. Didn't he know what kind of mission this is? This plane is about to become a super plane. If the laws really collapse, it will be an unimaginable disaster. Hundreds of millions of creatures in this plane will die directly. The plane fragments and the law fragments will cause damage to the surrounding planes. All planes are connected. Otherwise, why would there be so many transmigrators? Everything is for the sake of the mission. I hate that bitch 496 so much, but she didn't do anything. Grudges can be settled after completing the mission. 795 shook his head. Especially. 795 glanced at the room and whispered, with the first-generation mission enforcers here, we have to be careful. They are the ones who set the rules. Ning Shu couldn't help but sigh. Zhang Jiasen's level was too low. He was a beginner mission enforcer and didn't know much about the higher-ups. That was why he was so impulsive. He wanted revenge too much. 795 patted Ning Shu's shoulder, take it slow. It's good that 6,457 isn't here. You don't have to be wary of him. Thank you. Ning Shu thanked him. Are the first-generation mission enforcers very strong? Don't they use other people's bodies? Ning Shu asked. They only need to suppress their power to the minimum and directly enter the plane, 795 said. I also want to appear in my handsome original body. Ning Shu, my mouth ulcer is serious. 795 pouted, give me some saliva. Ning Shu turned and entered the room. When he saw the uncle with his long legs crossed, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Damn, the uncle now was so scary. Where did the cute school doctor who only knew how to dissect people with a scalpel and not kill people with a gun go? Dong dong dong. A series of hurried footsteps sounded on the stairs. For 96 Lu Shanshan said to the uncle, 2 girls are dead. The uncle stood up and walked upstairs with his long legs. Ning Shu also hurried to follow. When he entered the room, he saw 2 girls tied up with their backs facing each other. Wooden sticks in the shape of shuttles were inserted from their mouths to the back of their heads. Their heads were like a stick of candied haws. The wooden sticks pierced their heads from their mouths. Their mouths were open to the maximum and their eyes bulged. The sharp wooden sticks at both ends were stained with blood and brain matter. Ning Shu's pupils constricted. So cruel. Why did they have to kill people like this? Ning Shu felt a chill run down his spine. Was it a perverted killer who pursued the pleasure of killing people? What kind of deep hatred did they have to kill people in such a way? The uncle's face was cold and his body was cold. He wore gloves and checked the situation around him. He looked at the other 2 girls huddled in the corner of the Kong and asked, "What happened last night?" The 2 girls were already in a trance from fear. When they heard the uncle's voice, their bodies convulsed and they said in horror, "No, no, I don't know. I don't know anything." One of the girls hugged her head. Her eyes were red and she actually cried nervously, "We will die, we will all die, ha 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 ha." While she was crying, a nervous smile appeared on her face. She was scared out of her wits. Plop. The club's president, Fan Junyang, knelt on the ground. His face was full of panic and despair. He desperately knocked his head on the floor, which was dripping with blood. How could this be, how could this be? Fan Junyang muttered to himself, how could this happen? The uncle tightly pursed his lips and coldly said, "Take the bodies away." Ning Shu checked the scene. Did the people in the room commit the crime or did they come in from outside? The uncle lifted his foot and walked to the Kong. He knocked on the wall and the Kong with his hand to see if there were any hidden mechanisms or tunnels. There was no movement at all when they died. Every time they died, it was silent. When people felt pain, they would struggle and scream. But she was awake the whole night and did not hear any sound. If it was done by a human, there would definitely be traces. People were killed when they were unconscious or when they could not feel pain. Was it because they were drugged or injected with anesthetic? Chapter 848. Ning Shu suspected that the person who was killed while unconscious. Moreover, the people in the same room as her did not feel anything. Perhaps the people in the same room were all asleep. Ning Shu twitched his nose but did not smell anything in the room. He looked around and found a pile of fine dust at the foot of the wall behind the door. Someone had lit incense in the room. Ning Shu dipped a bit of dust on her finger and sniffed it, but there was no smell at all. There was really no smell at all. The uncle walked over and squatted beside Ning Shu, looking at the incense. "Hidden incense," the uncle said lightly. Ning Shu was surprised. Ning Shu had heard of hidden incense before. This type of incense had no smell at all. Hidden meant that it was hidden and there was no smell at all. However, this incense had a strong calming effect. Legend had it that when Hua Tuo was scraping Guan Yu's bones, he lit the hidden incense. Guan Yu did not feel any pain at all. When the bones were scraped, he could drink wine, eat meat, chat, and play chess. Everyone in the room was dead asleep, but the person who was killed was completely unaware. Ning Shu walked to the 2 girls huddled in the corner of the Kong bed. He reached out and pinched the girl's arm. The girl did not seem to feel any pain. He did not find this in the room earlier. It must have been cleaned. Hidden incense was very rare. The workmanship was complicated and it belonged to the type that had lost its secret recipe. There was no such thing on the market. Rare things were definitely expensive, ridiculously expensive. How could such a thing appear in such a place? 749 came to Ning Shu's side and said, "In this group of people, other than the dead Pan Chen, Fan Junyang's family is the richest. Ning Shu looked at Fan Junyang, whose face was covered in blood. He sat on the ground dispiritedly and leaned against the wall. All signs pointed to Fan Junyang as the most suspicious. The uncle stood up. Ning Shu said, "Take the bodies down. My hand is crippled." Ning Shu raised his hand. "I'll do it," 749 said. 749 was very strong. He carried the corpses down the stairs. The uncle said to Fan Junyang, "Gather everyone in the central room." "All right." Fan Junyang struggled to stand up, but he had kowtowed too hard and felt dizzy. He went to call for help. Ning Shu followed the uncle down to the central room. In the central room, the old woman looked at the corpses in the courtyard and muttered about their sins. "Can you leave this place? What did you provoke?" The old woman asked in a panic. "Please leave, I beg you. I don't want your money, and I don't want your lodging fee." The old woman leaned on her crutches, looking panicked and scared, a sharp contrast with Lan behind her. Lan's face was a little blank because she couldn't see. Even though she knew that someone had died, she couldn't see how the person died. Lan was the only one in the group who was truly fearless. Fan Junyang called for everyone to come down. The central room was filled with people. Everyone was trembling in fear. There was also a girl who was scared out of her wits. She was giggling. Her laughter made people's hair stand on end, especially when they were so nervous and scared. "Teacher, what should we do?" Fan Junyang said desperately. He shouted, "I can't take it anymore." The uncle looked indifferent. "Then what do you want? Do you want to leave?" "I'd rather leave than stay in this place. There are ghosts here. I can't take it anymore." Fan Junyang's voice changed. His fingers couldn't help but tremble. "It's you who touched something and brought it here. You even said that there are ghosts here." The old woman leaned on her crutches, looking angry. Lan pulled the old woman's clothes and said, "Grandma, it's snowing outside. How do you want them to leave? These people died in our house. How can this be? Do we still want people to live in this house?" The old woman's voice rose. The room was silent. Only the sound of breathing could be heard. Some girls cried silently, but they didn't dare to run. They wanted to leave, but when they thought of Lin Xia, who ran out. She didn't come back for the whole night. She was probably dead. Many people placed their gazes on the tall, upright, and calm middle-aged man, their eyes filled with anticipation. Lu Shanshan asked the uncle, "Teacher, do you know who the murderer is?" "I think Fan Junyang is the most suspicious," Lu Shanshan said. 749 immediately said, "I said you're still suspicious. You have to have evidence first. Are you a man? You're as petty as a woman." Lu Shanshan looked at him with disgust. She then turned to look at the uncle. 749 pursed his lips. "You take the opportunity to get close to a man. Disgusting." Lu Shanshan looked at 749 with a murderous look. But when she thought about how the uncle was still beside her, she suppressed it. She turned her head and didn't look at the annoying 749. "I didn't kill anyone. I have no reason to kill anyone. I'm the president of the Chinese Art Society. If something happens to the members, I have the biggest responsibility." Fan Junyang was so anxious that his face turned red. The blood on his face had already dried. The other members looked at Fan Junyang with vigilance. Some of them even stayed away from him. Fan Junyang's face was full of bitterness. Ning Shu and the other mission enforcer stood at the side and didn't say anything. The most important task now was to survive. The 32 members of the Chinese Art Society were all dead. Ning Shu looked at the old lady and Lan. He tried to recall the plot. The members were all dead. What about the two of them? There weren't many plots for the two of them. Moreover, the plot had already been reincarnated countless times. The plot had already changed beyond recognition. Ning Shu couldn't help but scratch his head. What should he do if he caught the murderer? Kill the murderer. The mission this time was to stop the endless reincarnation. But how? They had been looking for the murderer since the beginning. But they couldn't find the murderer. Instead, more and more people died. The murderer appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Ning Shu felt that this pair of grandmother and granddaughter were the most suspicious. What about the motive? Could it be that killing people was fun? Ning Shu put himself in their shoes. A group of people stayed in his house. Why would he want to kill them all? For money. If it was really this pair of grandmother and granddaughter, they had the yellow pear tree. If the Tibetan incense was also theirs, it meant that they didn't lack money. Too bored. They wanted to play a killing game with these people. Guess who I am? Revenge? Among these people, there were enemies of this pair of grandmother and granddaughter. But they killed everyone. Could it be that they were afraid of being discovered? So they killed everyone. Ning Shu's mind was in a mess. Logic didn't make sense. The uncle pointed at the crazy and scared girl and said, "Don't pretend to be crazy. You killed the two girls." Everyone looked at the crazy girl in a daze. The girl was still giggling. Lu Man, the people she killed, everyone immediately moved away from her. The crazy look on Lu Man's face could no longer be maintained. The uncle said impatiently, "Tie her up. Take turns watching." Chapter 849. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't kill them, Lu Man explained anxiously. If you didn't kill anyone, why are you acting crazy? Lu Shanshan sneered. You're just giving yourself away. Lu Man bit her lip and swore, I really didn't kill anyone. I didn't. Because you're pregnant, the uncle said indifferently. Lu Man's eyes widened and she reflexively covered her stomach. The others looked at Lu Man strangely. Lu Man's face was red. I'm not pregnant. I'm not. As Lu Man spoke, she beat her stomach with her hand to prove that she wasn't pregnant. However, after beating it twice, her face became very pale and she didn't dare to beat it again. Ning Shu looked at Lu Man. Mei Ziqing had said that a girl was pregnant. So it was her. Mei Ziqing could see souls. Could the uncle also see that there was an extra soul in Lu Man's body? Ning Shu immediately understood. He was a first-generation mission enforcer and could definitely see it. Why did you kill them? And in such a cruel way? Fan Junyang asked in shock. Lu Man bit her lip and said, they whispered that I was pregnant. Ning Shu pursed his lips and directly used the stick to pierce their mouths. Ning Shu asked, where did you get the hidden incense? What hidden incense? I don't know. Lu Man shook her head with tears streaming down her face. Her face was full of regret. Ning Shu looked at the uncle. The uncle's face was indifferent. Tie them up and take turns watching. Did you kill the others? Lu Shanshan asked. Lu Man was tied up. She shook her head and said, I only killed 2. You really? Ning Shu was speechless. Lu Man stared at Ning Shu. What do you know? I was raped. A man raped me. Lu Man broke down and shouted. Ning Shu pursed his lips and apologized, I'm sorry, I didn't know. However, she was raped by a man and became pregnant. Because of this, she had to kill the person who gossiped. He was in such a sorry state that he even loathed himself and wanted to kill him. However, this matter was still unsolved. Who lit the incense, and who killed the people in front of them? Is the man who raped you in the team? Ning Shu asked. Lu Manman's hands and feet were tied. She sat on the ground with her head lowered. Her body trembled and tears fell to the ground. She didn't seem to hear Ning Shu's words and didn't make a sound. Ning Shu said, "Let's untie her. With so many people watching, she can't do anything. You're so disgusting. You're like a white lotus. Do you sympathize with her? She killed people for her own selfish desires. What's there to sympathize with?" Lu Shanshan said disdainfully. She looked at Ning Shu with disdain. Ning Shu was speechless. Well, she was a white lotus. A pregnant woman sitting on the cold ground. Even if she was going to be executed, she would wait for the child to be born. Do you think everyone is as cold and heartless as you? She didn't kill you. Why are you so indignant? If you were raped, you would do the same. 795 suddenly choked. No, even if a man raped you, you would be very happy. Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, what kind of deep hatred did she have to use such words to attack someone? Lu Shanshan was so angry that her whole body trembled. She pointed at 795 and said fiercely, "I won't let you go. See, I only said a few words and you're like this." 749 shrugged his shoulders. Do you want to kill me for your own selfish desires? You. Lu Shanshan was so angry that her eyes were red. Teacher, let's just tie her up. The members said one after another, we're all from the same club and we're all familiar with each other. How could she do this? She's too cruel. Lu Manman still had her head lowered and didn't say a word. Ning Shu didn't say anything. He would never know what it was like if it didn't happen to him. Lu Manman was thrown alone in a corner. No one dared to get close to her. She curled her legs and knocked her forehead on her knees. People who passed by her would take a detour, forming a vacuum around her. The central room was quiet. The cold wind was blowing outside, and the heavy atmosphere was pressing down on everyone's hearts. So what if they caught the murderer of the two girls? They couldn't leave at all. It was easy to get lost in the vast expanse of white. The snow had already covered their calves. It was as if there was an inexplicable force preventing them from leaving. The murders had been happening in this house in a cycle. Old lady, please prepare some food for us, Fan Junyang said tiredly. The old lady supported herself with her walking stick and said impatiently and anxiously, "Can't you all leave my house? Each of you has a murderous aura. Grandma, it's snowing so heavily now." "Let's wait," Lon said. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Lon, you can see the snow?" Lon shook her head. "I can hear it. Rain and snow have sounds." "Then did you hear anything upstairs last night?" Ning Shu asked. Lon said, "There are footsteps. There are footsteps every night. It's the sound of you getting up and walking around." Ning Shu saw that he couldn't get anything out of her, so he shut up. The old lady took her granddaughter to prepare breakfast. 3 meals a day were black flour steamed buns and porridge. When the old lady served rice, she was the first to serve it to Fan Junyang. She even scooped it dry. Just as Lu Shanshan said, there was something fishy going on. Ning Shu felt his head hurt badly. He felt that everyone was a murderer. There was no progress at all. Ning Shu turned to look at the uncle. His eyebrows were cold, and he couldn't tell what he was thinking. He was holding a scalpel that was shining with a silver light in his hand, which looked particularly terrifying. "What's the matter?" The uncle turned to look at Ning Shu. When he met the uncle's eyes, Ning Shu immediately cowered. He remembered the feeling of being killed. He shook his head and said, "Nothing. Do you want to eat a steamed bun?" Ning Shu handed him a black flour steamed bun. Ning Shu did it on purpose. This kind of steamed bun looked black and dirty. Ning Shu felt that he wouldn't eat it. "Starve to death, instructor, eat mine." Lu Shanshan took a steamed bun and handed it to the uncle. Faced with this situation, Ning Shu retracted his hand and put the steamed bun in his mouth. This super mission enforcer was obviously doing this to the uncle. He didn't want to join in the fun. The uncle took out a bottle of water from somewhere. He looked at the black flour steamed bun with disdain. "I'm not hungry." Lu Shanshan's face turned red. She didn't know if it was because she was embarrassed or embarrassed. TSK 795 started to act up again. "Don't other people have hands? Why do you have to take it?" Lu Shanshan looked calm and glanced at 795 indifferently. 795 straightened her face and pointed at Lu Shanshan. "If I die, it will be you who killed me." Ning Shu. Chapter 850. He didn't know what grudges there were between 795 and Lu Shanshan. No matter what Lu Shanshan said, 795 immediately objected and insisted on going against her. Ning Shu felt that 795 must have a crush on Lu Shanshan and wanted to use a unique way to attract her attention. Lu Shanshan was the most beautiful woman Ning Shu had ever seen. Her temperament and appearance were top-notch. Especially her ancient clothes, which made her look otherworldly. She didn't look like the bitch 795 was talking about at all. There was nothing wrong with liking someone, but 795's way of doing things had angered Lu Shanshan. Not to mention liking her, she might even want to destroy her. Ning Shu looked at 795,795, who was eating a black steamed bun, with an inexplicable gaze. Seeing Ning Shu's gaze, she asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Ning Shu said, "If you like someone, work hard and earn a lot of money. When she gets married, you can contribute more money." 795, "What are you talking about?" 795 was confused. Ning Shu smacked his lips and understood. Ning Shu ate a steamed bun and saw Lu Man, who was squatting in the corner with her head lowered. Ning Shu took a steamed bun and walked over. He said, "Eat something." Lu Man still had her head lowered and ignored Ning Shu. Ning Shu put the steamed bun in a bowl and placed it beside her. He sat beside Lu Man and asked, "Did you kill both of them?" A pregnant girl tied two other girls together and killed them with a wooden stick. "How did you think of using such a method?" Ning Shu asked. Lu Man buried her head. Her body was trembling slightly, and her voice was nasal. "I hate them for whispering and saying such nasty things. I really want to cut their tongues." "Who raped you?" Ning Shu asked softly. Lu Man did not say anything. "Where did you get your wooden stick?" Moreover, it was sharpened. If you wanted to kill someone, you would have such a tool. Their hearts were dug out by claws, their heads were skewered by wooden sticks, and their eyes were pierced by writing brushes. "It's in the shed next to the kitchen," Lu Man said without raising her head. Ning Shu stood up and walked out of the central room. He stepped on the thick snow and arrived at the shed next to the kitchen. It was a very simple shed with some firewood inside. On the side, there was a pile of wooden sticks that were half the height of a person. The wooden sticks were about half the size of a fist, and they were all sharpened. Lu Man took the weapon from here. Ning Shu walked slowly to the central room. When he passed by the kitchen, he saw Lan sitting in front of the stove. Ning Shu thought for a moment, then walked into the kitchen and asked Lan, "What's the use of the sharpened wooden sticks next to it?" Lan said, "They're used to make fences. Grandma said that when the snow melts, we'll plant vegetables in the yard. Those wooden sticks were sharpened by Grandma. They're sharpened so that they can be used as stakes." Ning Shu pursed his lips. This explanation was very logical. Lu Man saw this thing and used it as a weapon. Ning Shu turned and walked out of the kitchen. From the corner of his eye, he saw Lan, who was bending over to pick up the firewood, wearing a red rope around her neck. It seemed to be something to ward off evil spirits, such as a jade pendant or talisman paper. It probably never left her body. The red rope was a little black. Is there anything else? Lon asked with empty eyes. Ning Shu asked with some surprise, you knew I was looking at you. Lon said, my eyes can't see, but my other senses are much more sensitive. Besides, you've been staring at me. I can feel it. Even if I eat steamed buns every day, there are no vegetables. Can you make some vegetable soup? I'm constipated. Ning Shu touched his stomach. It's so swollen. In a northern area like this, there should be cellars to store some potatoes and sweet potatoes. Ning Shu wanted to find a reason to go to the cellar. Lon shook her head. Grandma is old, and I can't see. The vegetables I planted aren't enough to eat in winter. Is that so? There's no vegetables in the cellar now? Ning Shu asked. Lon shook her head. Actually, there's not much food at home. Grandma has always wanted you to leave. First, there's evil spirit on you. Second, there's not much food at home. If you don't leave, we'll starve to death. We can't leave in this weather, Ning Shu said. Why don't we eat once a day from now on? Lon smiled, but her eyes were empty. Coupled with her smile, it seemed a little creepy. Ning Shu left the kitchen and returned to the living room. Uncle Ning Shu waved. Come here. Ning Shu felt uncomfortable. He slowly moved over. Instructor, what's the matter? You're not dead, Uncle said. Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck, what's wrong with him? It's one thing to kill someone, but he's deliberately provoking me. Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He didn't know how to answer him. Remember, as a mission enforcer, you have to know what's important in order to go far. Endless life comes with a price. Uncle pointed at the chair next to him. Sit. Ning Shu sat down. His hair stood on end. He could feel the uncle's cold aura through his clothes. Thank you, instructor. I understand, Ning Shu said sincerely. Fuck, Ning Shu really wanted to beat his chest. He was so sullen. He had been killed, and he still had to thank him. Uncle glanced at Ning Shu. He crossed his long legs and tilted his neck slightly. His neck moved a little. Ning Shu heard it and felt a little creepy. Are you afraid of me? Uncle turned to look at Ning Shu. Ahahaha. Ning Shu faked a laugh. I'm not afraid. Ning Shu straightened his back and put his hands on his knees. He was so fucking afraid of death. The person next to him was in control of other people's fates. He had only killed him once last night. I'm just asking you if you're scared, are you scared? Anyway, Ning Shu was afraid of death. Ah, screams came from upstairs. Ning Shu quickly stood up. Something must have happened again. Ning Shu quickly went upstairs. 795 ran down the stairs and bumped into Ning Shu. Ning Shu fell to the ground. Aya, can you watch where you're going? 795 pulled Ning Shu up and said anxiously to Uncle, he died again. This time, it's even more disgusting. Uncle stood up and went upstairs with his long legs. Ning Shu hurried upstairs and saw a room full of people. Some girls were even supporting themselves against the wall and vomiting. Ning Shu squeezed into the room and saw a corpse hanging upside down in the room. The lower half of the body was naked, and both legs were tied up with ropes. The palm-wide saw went from the crotch to the abdomen. It was as if the person was going to be cut in half. The buttocks were already separated, and the saw had already reached the navel. What was more terrifying was that this person seemed to be conscious. Because he was hanging upside down, there was enough blood to provide oxygen to his head. In his conscious state, he could clearly feel the saw in his body. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.